Hello, and welcome to the 63rd episode of Rambling Weekly. I am Taylor. Hi. And we're going to be talking about physical possession. And by we, I mean I've got a guest. It's a returning guest. I think this is the
I'm
first one.
back.
Woo! So, yeah. So, B. Clark and I are going to talk about that stuff. First, we're going to take a break and then get into it. Welcome back. So yeah, this is a new tune. I actually really dig it. It is Burning
Nice.
Road, Night Strike, like from the Night Striker. Yeah,
Yes,
making sure I'm saying that right.
you got it.
And that's the Zuntata. I always like that Zuntata.
It is. The For those who aren't familiar with the game, it is a 1989. I don't. It's definitely a shooter slash shmup, but I don't exactly know what the subgenre is to describe these. But think like Space Harrier, where
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of like behind the ship and you're just sort of rotating it around the screen. It's what if Space Harrier but an armored flying car, instead of a man with a gun, which I guess is what Space Harrier was. And
Yeah.
yes, it is Zuntata, who is Taito's in-house, still is Taito's in-house band, even though different people are in it now.
Mm-hmm.
And astute listeners of the show will know that I also picked a Zuntata song the last episode that I was on, though it was not from Night Striker.
The thread continues.
Yes. I gotta represent Taito and Zuntata. They are some of my favorites.
That is totally you're not gonna get any fault from me on that because that's an element that I'm not as familiar with like Taito stuff and Zuntata.
Sure.
It's just kind of, I mean, there's only so many hours in the day,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
right? So,
Absolutely. And this is like if you listen to the soundtrack from the original game, it's not really like this arrangement at all.
mm,
It's the original music is really cool, but like this is just a complete like rock arrangement of Burning Road, like from top to bottom. It sounds straight out of like Top Gun or something, to be completely honest. And I love it. Like it's not particularly the style that Zuntata is known for. Like they're generally a little bit more avant-garde,
mhm.
but this is just like them deciding to completely rock out.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. And I know with the make it tangential. The original version I heard and kind of passed my thoughts to you on it about it. It
Yes.
definitely gives East vibes.
Yeah,
So
I never thought of it, but I can see it after you said it.
yeah, I don't know if it's maybe like the quote unquote instrumentation used or just how
I
it
I
comes
think
off.
it might have been, yeah, and maybe something kind of in the water at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because this was a little later in the 80s than Ease was, but still it would have been, relatively fresh in the memory, I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
at this point. So it's believable that, Mar, who's the person from Zuntata who composed this, was kind of like, either was really into Ease or like knew Yuzo Koshiro or someone, it's just be like, oh, let me borrow a little bit of that sound.
Little dabble here, little dabble there.
Yeah. Musicians all steal from each other. I mean, it's a well documented fact, you know.
Right.
So I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, the good ones just admit to it, I guess, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, how you been?
I've been good. 8 months ago, I looked up the previous episode to see how long ago it was because what is time?
What is time?
Um, 8 months was when I was last on, and it's been kind of a crazy 8 months. It's not out yet at this point, but I've been writing a book,
Woo!
which I turned in the manuscript for like a couple weeks ago. It will eventually, hopefully, be coming out from Limited Run Games. Realistically, probably next year, like early next year, but we'll kind of see how the printing process goes. The title, unless something happens to change it between now and then, and God, I hope I'm not messing this up, and if I am, I'm at least close. You know, the title to my own book. I decided to call it A Media Ouroboros, Japanese. God, I've already messed.
That's all right.
Something akin to Japanese recording artists and the video games about them. It is a book completely just delving into like the history of like video games that have actually featured and or been about like Japanese recording artists over the years. So very niche, but something I hope that people will find cool when it comes out.
It sounds like it would be one of those almost like a coffee table book in a way. If that makes sense.
I'll take it.
Well, I don't mean that as like a derogatory sense. I think it's like,
no, I know.
Like, you know, that's one of those you put on your like. Right now, I've got the Deadwood Bible on my coffee table, or like, but it's I love that TV show.
Sure.
It's all about David Lynch and the TV series and stuff like that. So it's like, it seems like something. It's like, oh, I've got some friends that are like really into games and stuff. I'm gonna put that on the coffee table.
Please, everyone, do that. Please, everyone, buy it and put it on your coffee tables when it comes out.
So,
if you don't have a coffee table, buy one, please, explicitly to put this on it.
Right. But yeah, no, it's one of those. Even though you say it's a niche thing, I think that is still because it is a niche thing. It's certainly something deserving of people possibly looking into. I know you had mentioned that somebody had done it, but I'd always wanted to do Gunpei Yokoi, like a video on him and stuff.
Sure.
But because I feel
like
like
interesting guy.
A, he's an interesting guy, and B, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for what he brought to the table that so many other people at Nintendo.
I totally agree. Yeah. He gets a little more love with gaming YouTube being a little more, mini documentary heavy these days, but I would still agree with you that he isn't talked about nearly as much as he should be.
Right. I mean, that philosophy of just like the lateral thinking with withered technology is still
the basis of Nintendo, like today, still, even now.
25, 27 years after his passing?
Something like that, yeah.
So, but no, this is good to get the that sort of, especially because it was depending on what. Is it like very hyper focused in a certain era of time?
No, it actually. Sorry, I really didn't mean this episode to be all about this book, which hasn't been out yet. I more meant to mention it in passing in terms of like how things have been the last 8 months.
You're good. I would just give it pepper, give a little flavor.
Okay, I'll just say it spans multiple decades.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it's 80s, 90s, and a little into the early 2000s, and that's kind of when these types of games like tapered off because the video game industry just sort of went in a different direction away from like more licensed titles like this, especially as like when HD gaming approached, like these things just don't exist anymore. Maybe they do on mobile devices, but that was kind of out of scope of what I was covering. I was just covering console releases really, but yeah, mostly focused 80s and 90s, I'd say, with a little into like the PS2 era
There you
kind
go.
of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's meant to be like a little bit about the artist, if you don't know anything about the artist, a little bit about the game, and just that was the mission statement pretty much. Yeah.
Because I know a few other people have put out gaming books. Didn't like Pat the NES Punk put out
I think
put
so.
out like a big compilation for like
I
all the
think
NES games
so.
or something.
And like that sounds like a nightmare to me, to be
You're right.
honest. Like that, you'd have to pay me a lot of money to do something like that. And who would? Because I'm absolutely not the most qualified person to do a book like that by a million miles. But even this was like, who knew writing books is hard work? Oh my God, news at 11. But it sure is. Like this was more than I thought it would be, and like on the scale of like book sizes, like mine is not a gigantic tome by any stretch of the imagination, but it just took a lot, like
It's
both in time and in energy and any amount of measurement the thing can take from a person.
it's a piece of your soul, and I know that it's a little
Yes,
bit different in the sense of like what you've written and what like I've written.
for sure. Yeah.
But I mean, it's still there's still a passion that just
Yes,
takes from you, and it's like,
absolutely.
oh boy, like the one I'm going through now. I'm probably about 3/4, 4/5 of the way soft editing before I get into the super
Mm-hmm.
hyper editing portions of it. And since I'm a cheapskate, I just self publish it. So
I can understand. I mean, I had somebody kind of, make me an offer to publish this essentially. Otherwise, I may never have done it.
that's fair. That's fair.
So I get it. And like I hear you about editing because editing is not cheap. As
Yeah,
someone
no.
who just went through, paying for a round of editing, luckily, again, mine is not a tome. It was, in a Word doc, it was just over 100 pages. So like but it was still
Oh,
expensive.
okay.
I had a great editor. Like I'm not dissatisfied at all with the quality of the work, but it was not cheap.
Yeah, no, I pull back the curtain at least on my end. For Sudraba, I got a deal, or at least a deal. I had it was like 64 or 70 odd pages
Mm.
edited, and she gave me like 14 or 15 pages worth of notes about like my
Okay.
writing style, things she liked, things that I needed to clean up.
Okay, so
And
it was more like fundamental to like your style, so you could take it and like extrapolate it out to the whole
exactly.
book yourself, basically,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
Yeah, so I paid I think that was about $800 or something for, and I don't think it might have been fewer pages. I don't exactly
Sure.
remember the number, but I know it wasn't triple digits, but it was like 2 cents a word.
Yeah, mine was into not very far in, but into the triple digits.
Oh,
I kind of prepared for it, so
yeah.
it wasn't the end of the world. Like I had, unfortunately, the publisher did not pay for this. I had to do it, but it's fine.
It's fine.
I
Everything's
I
fine.
was right. Yeah, I'd say as I hyperventilate because my bank account is empty. No, that's not true. But no, I was prepared for it and I planned for it, so it was not so bad.
Yeah, definitely. Unless you're, raking in Stephen King money.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a day job. Obviously, I'm not writing books for money. God help me if I was doing that today, because I would be out on the street. But yeah, I've plenty to fund what I need to fund on projects like this.
That's, I guess, the fun thing too, because then you get something like that done, and then do your eyes start to wander and think, oh, what's the next one I want to do?
I mean, yeah, like I'm holding myself back because I like not to sound completely motivated by money, but I want to see if this turns out to be worth my while
Mm,
financially, right? Because yes, there is an element to like in the end, did I enjoy the process of writing it? Absolutely. And like no matter what happens, I'll be extremely glad that I did this.
mhm.
Like undoubtedly. But if nobody buys it, like, will I do another one? I can't say for sure that I will,
Mm,
because like time is a thing, right?
mhm.
Like satisfaction is a thing, but time it takes to achieve a thing is also something. And like I don't know, like I don't have a magic number attached to it or anything. We'll have to see, but like if it does nothing, then I can't say for sure that I'll be too motivated to like try it all again because my next idea is definitely more ambitious.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll see.
That's certainly more pragmatic route. Mine, because it's, you know, fiction. It's a little bit more of just like writing is more of a catharsis for me.
No, and I totally get that for sure.
So it's like, I sold a lot more copies of Sudraba than I ever anticipated.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, well, I also had a very low bar. So,
Well, but still, I mean, it's all about expectation management going in, right? Like in the end, that's what controls it.
exactly. I didn't. It wasn't like I advertised a whole bunch or anything of the
Right.
sort. So
Yeah.
I was like, just this, and I actually ended up selling a whole lot more. Not like a whole lot more, but it
Right.
was like, all right, cool, great. So,
Right.
and you've seen the cover for
Yep.
the next one. That's getting a
Mhm.
little bit of a tweak here and there, but nothing too major. And I'm pretty excited for it because I think that cover pops, and for another, like outside of on the spine putting the title and my
Mhm.
name, there's not going to be anything else on that cover or the back.
Yeah, just focusing completely on the art.
What is
That's admirable.
dare it? It's just daring people. It's like pick me up, find out, figure it out,
It is
give it a
very
read.
unconventional. I think it might, to a certain extent, actually have that effect.
We'll see that, or I'm just
Yeah. Well,
gonna stub my
again,
toe.
we'll see.
Right. Right. So, goodness. But yeah, I'm very happy for you to be able to get that done. I know you had mentioned it a
Thanks.
bit about like getting through it. It's a pain in the butt. And then
Yeah,
the pictures and figuring all that fun jazz.
yeah. Honestly, that might have been the worst part of it.
Hmm.
I did shock and awe. I did not get any Japanese record companies to respond to my request to use promotional photos for any of their artists in the book. I kind of didn't expect to. But I also, what you're referring to is I, more for my own peace of mind than anything else, wanted to sort out like what my rights were around, like, okay, well, can I use an image from, say, an FMV game which actually features one of these artists, like actual video of them, not like a sprite of them? So that was another whole process that I had to go through. But in the end, for any enterprising video game book writers out here, I can save you a lot of time and worrying and money and tell you really the like first of all, there is no absolutely bulletproof way that you won't get sued over something like and permission is the only bulletproof way.
Mm.
But the reason that people who publish these books often don't is because they're transformative in nature. So you're not attempting to replace a product, right? You're enhancing it, so to
Hmm.
speak. You're critiquing it or you're doing something with it. And you're not using, hopefully you're not using the images to sell the book. Like I'm not putting any images from a game on the book cover. I had a extremely talented artist friend of mine do the book cover, which I'm
Nice.
extremely happy with. And I'm not, using anyone's images to sell it. I'm following the less is more philosophy when it comes to images,
Mm.
especially the ones featuring actual people. And I was advised that I should be a-okay if I follow these guidelines because it would be very easy to convince a judge that I'm doing this in the spirit of fair use. That said, this is all my paranoia. I have no delusions that enough people will see this book to garner a lawsuit from like one of any of the companies involved in this. And I knew this from the start. This is all for my own peace of mind.
You can get the video game Eye of Sauron. Just
Right, yeah, that is not gonna happen. Like, it just isn't. Like, this is, as far as I know, and as of now, only going to be sold in the U.S. Like, it's not going to get a Japanese print run or anything that I'm aware of. Like, maybe I'd be in a little bit deeper water if that was the case. But that most likely will never be the case, so...
fun. Yeah, because, all that sort of fun changes and...
Yeah.
Whatever, what's got to go on with that. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't even want to. I don't.
In that way, you're lucky that you're a fiction writer. In
Right.
other ways, I'm sure you're not, but in that way, you are.
Yeah, there's that. There's the absolute inundation of all the people who, and I welcome it. I'm not like, don't write. No, if people want to write, totally go for it.
Right.
I think people just need to taper their expectations, as well as, figure out why it is you're writing something.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I know for me, it's just a catharsis. These are
Yeah.
stories like the one that I'm working on now. This is the one story idea that was going to initially be a game that Matt and David we were working on. I had 250 plus pages of notes of all sorts of things.
Holy.
Oh yeah, I wasn't about to let this go to waste.
I can't blame you.
Like, I just absolutely not. No. So, and it works well because of all the story ideas that I do have. They're going to be, it's pretty much not like this is a spoiler. I think I have it on my author page on Amazon and stuff, but it's all like an anthology for like a planet. So they're telling stories, and it's getting them out of my head. Like, to get Sudraba out was a catharsis and just a nice kind of and to be getting to the end of at least part 1 of 2 for this next one is kind of like but because it's a 2-parter, I'm like, I'm antsy to get to the second part.
Right.
But it's like,
Right.
no, hold it.
Yeah.
Just hold it. Get
Whatever
this
you
one.
do, if it's an anthology that tells the story of a planet, just don't write a Phantasy Star 3, please. That'll tank your writing career.
Oh man, where, man, Phantasy Star, I miss you. They really, it would be really cool if they actually made a 5th one. I don't know. Did you ever see that video? I made a video about that.
How? I don't recall it.
It's I want to say it was in around 2015 or 2016.
Huh. Okay. I'm fairly certain I've watched most of your videos at this point, but it's just a question of where is that particular one sitting in the recesses of my memory.
How familiar are you with Phantasy Star lore?
I'm definitely not a deep lore person. Like, I've played all of them and I've finished all of them. It's even 3. It's just been a very long time since I went back to any of them. And so some of the lore stuff is atrophied a bit in my head, I think.
Well, like 3 has multiple endings.
Right.
I remember that.
Yes.
Like kind of like you. It's sort of. It's been a while since I've really touched base with Phantasy Star, but they were kind of starting to point towards the light beings that had imprisoned Dark Force.
Yes.
Not necessarily being good. They were just light beings, like just beings of energy kind of thing, but because of mistranslations and maybe personal interpretations, they sort of skewed them to, oh well, it's Dark Force, it's bad. No, Dark Force was a light being that turned bad because it was imprisoned, because it lost to the light beings, and they were supposed to kind of dive into that a little bit more, and they never they of course they just kind of ended it with 4 and then went on to PSO and stuff like that.
Unless they did, I was going to say, unless they did that at PSO at some point, but even then, I'm sure it wouldn't be a very satisfactory telling of it, given that you would have been like shooting stuff or whatever, like while it was happening.
Yeah, I could never get into PSO. It just it's not the same to me.
I like it well enough for what it is, like especially like PSO 1. I played a decent bit of. 2 not as much, but like I agree with you. It's absolutely not the same thing. Like it doesn't scratch the same itch. Like you have to want to play PSO, like explicitly.
Yeah, because I remember I wasn't even aware of it until I went to college because I had played the original Phantasy Star games when I was a kid, and then and then like years passed, and eventually I was a buddy of mine was like, oh yeah, you like Phantasy Star? Have you ever played online? I'm like watching this, going, what the heck is this? This isn't no, this is not
Are
Phantasy
you making
Star.
this up? Yeah.
right. He's playing it on the GameCube. I'm like, no, get this away from me. Nah, this is not Phantasy Star.
His GameCube just gets thrown out the dorm window.
They're sturdy little boxes. They could survive that. He lived on the first floor dorm room. It
Oh,
been
okay.
fine.
Maybe it would have been all right then.
But yeah, no, like it would have been cool to kind of get more into that because I love Phantasy Star 2. I don't think that game gets enough appreciation. Like Mother Brain's
yeah.
Psycho.
That's true. I like 2 a lot. I think some of the dungeon decisions are tantamount to war crimes.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But like the game, like the feeling that the game exudes, if that makes sense, is really great. The music is really great. So I forgive some of its dungeon crimes because of the other things that it brings to the table, I guess.
Well, it's like one of the story beats. I won't go into it, but it is done in a later game that gets a lot of praise for it. And it's like this game did this back in the 80s.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
The music thing you bring up is also very fascinating because it is also very bright and cheerful, and everything is very saccharine and sweet, and it's just insidiously sweet because Mother Brain's got it, and it's going to take care of you. Like I love like that even though it's a little clunky and it's in how it's written and stuff, just the way that Mother Brain addresses the characters and everything, I'm like, holy crap, it scared me as a child.
Yeah, it's a little eerie for sure.
Right? Very impressionable. But other than the book stuff, have you been like playing anything recently, or
a lot of Theatrhythm Final Bar line? Way too much of it, to be completely honest. Actually trying to like quote unquote get good at it.
Oh, okay.
I mean I definitely will have a ceiling, but like I've been trying to learn like the second to highest difficulty for a lot of songs. I'm just sort of working my way up the numbered difficulty and, kind of basically teaching my hands to do what they need to do fast enough.
So like I've never played any of them. Is it done by like button pressing? Like, oh, you need to hit the B at the certain point, or you need to hit X at the certain point? Or...
It's actually at the risk of making this a Theatrhythm podcast, there's basically 2 different types of songs. There's battle music and field music.
Okay.
And they're both played a little bit differently. So the field music is so button presses exist in both, and you can hit literally any button on the controller for a button press. It's not like you have to hit triangle, you have to hit whatever. It's like literally any face button you can hit, and it will count. And sometimes, of course, you have to hit multiples at the same time, and in that case, again, you can pick any 2 or whatever. But there's also directions too, and the directions are specific. So it will be like button down up, button down right, or whatever, and there'll be actual arrows that will point left, right, down, up, that you have to hit. So direction is very specific, button is not specific. In battle music, it's all on a horizontal line, or multiple horizontal lines. But on field music, it's kind of weird because you've got controller work where you have the direction kind of moving up and down on like a sloping line in real time. So you're kind of guiding, using the stick or whatever controller you're playing in these parts. It's very hard to describe. You almost kind of need to see a video of it for it to make any sense, because I've never played another rhythm game that quite worked the same way before. I'm sure there's one out there.
The way you say it makes me think of almost something like Gitaru Man with the stick.
Yeah, it's been an embarrassingly long amount of time since I played Gitaru Man, so that might be completely accurate, but I'm having trouble remembering even that much detail.
There's the attack and defense stage. So in the defense stage, the button presses are coming inward from different, like either from top, bottom, left, or right, and you have to hit them once it like squares up with the center. On the attack phase, you use the stick to directionally move in line with the line that's going throughout, so it could kind of like bottom
sounds very much like what I'm describing.
Okay,
so
all right.
I'll have to look up a video later to be sure, but it's at least similar in concept, to be sure. So Gitaru Man might have done it first.
Gotcha. At least, it sounds similar.
But there's a very enterprising engineer in Taiwan who is actually made. So there was an arcade version of this, I should say.
Okay.
It started out as a 3DS game. It had a couple different games on the 3DS before this most recent one. And then there was an arcade version, which came out in Japanese arcades, but of course, Round Ones and places like that have it here too, obviously. But on that is 2 buttons. And not sticks like control sticks, but like balls almost.
Oh, like Golden Tee?
To do sort of.
Okay.
That you use to do the directional stuff. So you just kind of flip it and like rotate it on the field music more than you do like, work a control stick.
Uh-huh.
And someone actually made a pretty decent approximation of this control setup that works for Switch and PS4, which is the platforms that this came out for. And I laid down a pretty considerable amount of money to get this, and it's really cool.
Nice.
Because even though this specific version of the game did not have an arcade release, like it is sort of emulating like what that arcade release was like. So this way, if I ever go to a Round 1 or something, it can kind of, my skill set will transfer a little bit better because I'm used to practicing it on a similar control type versus, just like a Switch controller, which is a perfectly valid way to play it, but that I don't feel would translate as well if you just decided to walk up to the arcade machine and play it. You'd be like, well, I can play the song on the Switch version, but I do horrible at it here because the control scheme is completely different. So, yeah.
I didn't realize it was on the Switch. I guess I should pick that up at some point.
Final Fantasy music, man. That's pretty much all. That's the selling point. I mean, it has stuff from Saga games. It has Nier. It has The World Ends With You on there. If you buy all the DLC, a lot of that stuff is DLC.
Gotcha.
It has stuff from the why am I blanking on it? The Live Alive remake. Like it's full of stuff.
What about Dragon Quest? I thought there was, or is there
well, there was that 3DS game that was just Theatrhythm Dragon Quest, but they did not put, or at least yet, I mean, who's to say what the future holds, but there is no Dragon Quest content on here. There is no Chrono Trigger content either yet, for those who are wondering about that. Even though I think past Theatrhythm games have had a track or two from Chrono Trigger, if I'm not mistaken. So anything's possible. I mean, they're all owned by the same.
Down. He's like, no, you ain't getting none.
Right, he's like, no rhythm games for you. Forget it.
I'm going to make more Creed albums.
And it has, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which is the most rockin' Final Fantasy soundtrack that there ever was. So.
I appreciate Sasai getting some love.
Nice crunchy Super Famicom guitars.
Well, you said
love it.
The Saga ones are on there too, or at least some of them. Saga 3. That's.
I don't remember which of the Game Boy sagas are on there. I know there's definitely some Romancing Saga on there as well. Which Romancing Saga is like the bass lines on some of those songs. My God, it's just amazing.
Filthy.
Yeah, it's very filthy. I don't remember because my knowledge of the Game Boy sagas is not what I would like it to be. So they're a little blendy
They have that nice little
together in my head.
collection.
I know. I have no excuse other than I have games like Xenoblade 3, which I've had for going on a year, and I'm still only in like chapter 3 because book.
Because
At least that's
right,
what I'll
no,
blame for now.
I'm glad that you say that because I feel like if whenever I say that sort of thing of, oh yeah, I can't get to some of these things, that other people are like, why not? And it's like,
Yeah.
book.
When you pick up a project like that, it is, whether it's me letting me do this to myself or not, like it is very consuming. And if they weren't for the book writing, I played very little games during that however many months stretch that I was, actively writing that thing for.
Yeah, just get into a wild, like, laser focus of just.
And I have a mostly probably bad, but maybe in some aspects good habit of knowing when I have something kind of hanging over my head, like a project, even when it's one that I know is going to be longer term, which is the kind of bad part about this that doesn't make any sense. Like, I have difficulty allowing myself to focus on just having fun. Like, part of my brain will not let me go and it's just like, but you've got this thing. And then the more rational part of my brain is like, but we budgeted for this to be a, XYZ month affair. It's okay. We can stop and have some fun. And then the other half is like, but you have it.
No fun allowed.
And it's like, what part of my brain will win out on any given day? Who's to say? But
No, I definitely struggled with that, especially when I was writing Sudraba. Sudraba, I turned into like hyper hermit.
yeah,
Everybody just beware of the prickly bear. That
Yeah.
is me. I've been a lot better about that, especially as I've gone along and doing the edits for this next one. I've allowed myself to be a little bit more. No, here's something, Taylor. Get at least a chapter. Work on the chapter.
yeah. Small goals.
Right, get that done. Do that a day, and then if you're still feeling that momentum, keep it going. Which sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But get that done,
Absolutely.
and then then you got whatever else you got going on. Don't have to.
And that's a way healthier way to do it, I think. Like maybe you just needed to go through it once and then you kind of beat it out of your system, which I'm hoping is how it will work for me if I end up doing another one.
Hopefully, hopefully that'll work for you. Part of that's also you have to be able to like acknowledge or realize
Oh,
that
yeah.
about yourself, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So
I think I knew it at the time. It's not like I never did anything else and I never had fun. It really was just a day by day thing. Like today, will I allow myself to enjoy other things or not? No. Okay, I guess it's time to keep writing.
see, I got into a bad like teeter totter of this because I grew up super poor, so for a very long time I would be hyper miserly to be like
Sure.
I'm not doing anything because
It costs money.
it costs money. right,
Yeah.
right. I can breathe and maybe drink some water, take a shower.
Right.
That's all I'm getting out of today. like,
Well, that's costing you money.
well,
I guess you got to draw the line.
got to draw
even if you're
somewhere.
being
like-
miserly.
right. But yeah, it would be time. Eventually, I convinced myself it's like, well, okay, I'm not gonna spend money or something, but there's like where I live now, like I can literally walk across the street, and there is a nice like bike trail. Or
Nice.
that goes for like 3 or 4 miles, and it's like okay,
Right.
if I can't afford to do something, I
It's an activity. You still have an activity.
right? And so that's that habit built into me. But there were like stretches, even when I got older, before I had graduated college. Like Matt is very aware of this, and I think I might have mentioned it on one of the ramblings about
I think you have.
the potato and green peppers arc of my life.
Oh yes,
Okay,
yes,
did
yes, yes. I know. I'm not sure if it was from Rambling Weekly or like talking to you or what, but I definitely know what you're talking about.
Right.
It reminds me when you say it. It reminds me of the first episode of Cowboy Bebop when he was making the what was it?
Beef and bell peppers.
Yes, thank you. And it's just bell peppers.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much. That's
I just picture you with like Jet's visor on as you're cooking, like with the wok and whatever.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty. Outside of the visor, yep, just kind of like I'm just gonna tell myself bell peppers and beef. Yeah, that's or one of some who what would they say? Call it like struggle food. It's like
Yes.
this is what you're making when you're struggling.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And like I think that's pretty common for like especially people who maybe didn't grow up with so much money to like have that continue for a while into their like independent adult life. Like I've definitely known other people that were kind of like that too. I think it's a pretty common side effect of growing up that way.
Well, that, but then I had the pendulum swing when I actually did have money, where I just let it rain.
Oh,
Because I didn't know any better, right? Because it was
right.
like, oh,
Okay. Okay.
finally, it's kind of like the people who are so like repressed that they
Yeah.
don't know how to control themselves. Not to
Sure.
say I
Sure.
went
Sure.
like stupid, wildly crazy, but
No. Right.
like, I was just kind of
You
like,
did more than you should have done.
yeah, probably. I mean, I finished paying my school loans. Oh God, I don't have
Yeah.
any. Like, I took care
As
of
long as
that.
you didn't get kicked out into the street, then I mean,
Right.
all worked out.
Right. No, there was just stretches where it's like, man, because it was salary.
Back
It's
to the
like,
peppers.
yeah, well, almost. It'd be like borderline. Like, no, I'm not gonna allow this to happen. Like, I will. If anything, find something else. Like,
Yeah, I can relate. It's been a very long time for me, but when I moved in with someone, outside of my parents' house when I was still going to college, and I definitely had some pepper weeks, months. uh, Once I, graduated from college and like got a, job, it got gradually better and better. But yeah, I definitely had some times when I like overstepped my means and had to have like a, pretty tight belted month or however you want to put it. So I can understand.
they are. They're not fun experiences, but they're
Hopefully
learning.
you learn from them.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly
Yeah.
did.
It's a good way to foster a sense of discipline
Yes.
and just going, okay, that, and also like discipline, but also just kind of sometimes you get a little bit more creative with some of the food you make.
Sure.
And be like, oh,
It's true. It does bring about good things. That's true because I mean, let's be real. Like sometimes garbage food is real good. Like you know, just how it is.
right. So, but so you've been dropping tons of time in theater rhythm. Anything else? Or has it been
No,
pretty much?
I've been working on some games here and there, mostly shmups for a future sort of YouTube project that I'm, that's been kicking around in the back of my mind for a little while. That's sort of the next thing I want to do, potentially in between books, just to kind of get myself into that world a little bit. So I over the last few years I can't do too many, but there are several like shmups and just sort of general arcade games that I learned one credit clears on just because I thought it would be a fun thing to do. Like I think there's a satisfaction for going back and like mastering, so to speak, the games that like stymied you as a kid, like whether it be on NES or whatever, that's not specific to arcade games. I just happen to pick arcade games because I like them. And I have a really great arcade around here that has, cabinets of a lot of them.
Nice.
But I would like to start a project where I kind of show my thought process and like strategize like how to get through some of these, because so many of the one credit clear videos on YouTube for these games are like no commentary. You just have to observe and figure out what's happening and why it works. And like I would really like to see, I really think there's like a hole in that world for like really thorough breakdowns, or at least as thorough as I can make them. I'm not going to go into game code or anything, but you know, of why I do what I do and like why it works. And some other stuff as well outside of that too. Some writing I was doing on 1 Million Power that I think will just play better in video format as opposed to articles. But it's a thing that's been in the back of my mind for a while. So I've been trying to dust off some of those games and get footage of them, and just so I can have some fodder to edit together a bit later this year.
Nice, nice, nice.
And one day I'll get back to Xenoblade 3, but who knows?
Eventually.
I like it. I'm not putting it off because I don't like it. It's really cool. It's just time.
No, I get you. Like I'd like to play it because I've heard nothing but good things from just everybody who's played it to some degree. Another one that I haven't had time to I haven't even bought it yet is Octopath Traveler 2.
I haven't bought it yet either, but I absolutely want to get around to that too. I've heard basically all the problems that I had with the first one are fixed for the most part.
From what I heard, that as well, especially with the story stuff, it actually,
Yes.
it's more intertwined in a way that it's not
Yes.
like, oh, it's this one person and these other goobers that are only here to just kind of be pantomimed.
And I guess some of them are more, a little bit deeper than you would think based
Okay.
on. Like there were some character stories that I quite liked, one or two in the first game, but for the most part, a lot of them were very like by the books,
Yeah.
Fantasy stories, which is
Oh,
not
it's-
always a bad thing.
It's
but
Therian the Thief.
yeah, it's like here we go, this story again.
I like the apothecary guys.
Well, I think he was the only real interesting one, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because it had some real like weird stuff in there.
Hmm.
But everybody else was like, what if a warrior that was good? And it's like, okay, great. That's very original.
Great themes, great music. I haven't heard anything
Oh,
about
yeah.
the music for this one, so I'm kind of
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't heard people talking that up. Yeah, the first game had like a A-plus soundtrack.
those
Like
transitions.
it was just nuts.
Ooh, beautiful transitions. The battle themes, especially
Yep.
that secondary boss theme.
Yep.
And the what was it? The Burst and Break remix album.
Oh,
That's
yes.
some primo stuff too.
It's very good.
It's so good. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. I just that and I've still got to go back to triangle strategy.
Oh yeah, you were into that
And
for a while. You were running pretty hot on it.
yeah, and I love it. And I don't know. I just really fell off the wagon with it. And David, he had played through because you have to play through it multiple times before you get like the final
Of course.
act sort of thing because of the choices you make. But to me, I really liked the idea, and like the idea that you are torn between the duty of yourself, duty of your country or your people, and then duty
Right.
of your traditions and stuff like that. And
Right.
it's just like yes, and just some of the the big plot twist or like one of the big plot twists in it, to me, I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. And I can imagine that people are like, this is dumb, why is it this? And it's like, no, it makes so much sense, you guys, you just don't understand. Like it's such I don't want to mention it because it is kind of like because I haven't heard anybody say what it is.
No, I don't think I'm spoiled on it.
Yeah, there's like a big thing that goes on because it's you're kind of you're torn between three different kingdoms and
Right.
whatnot, and it has to do with just the stuff going on there, and it's just kind of like, oh, this is really fascinating, and it's just yeah, my goodness. I just I fell off of it. I don't know why, but
Just life. That's just how it happens
that's
sometimes. Like
yeah.
it has nothing to do with the game or the piece of media. It's just like something else in life happened and I was pulled away from it.
You know what I want to do for it'd be like multiple streams in a row. I want to stream doing reciting or actually doing live reads of even though it would all be in the same voice because I'm not going to change my voice for a lot of it is Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions.
Oh, that would be interesting,
I
actually.
I would
Some
be
of that dialogue is worth a reading for sure.
like I love that stuff. Like to me, that's the most like theatrical in the sense of theater
I mean,
writing.
coming from a person who has the Deadwood Bible on his coffee table, I'm not particularly surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, to me, it's some of the best writing. But it's like the best writing in the sense of just something very different. Like I also find the memory sequences of Lost Odyssey to be
I already knew what you were going to say as soon as you said memory sequences. We've talked about this so
right.
much because we both really, really love those things.
But yeah, just to do that because like Wycraft has so many good lines. Like so many,
It's
and
true.
it's scary. Like because it's like
It's true.
he's a bad guy, but he's got some
Yeah.
really like just great zingers. It's like Ramza, shut your mouth. Like
You're out of your league, buddy.
right? The what's Argraf? Is that the jerk off that's in chapter one? Argaf or something that you save?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a minute since I did a tactics playthrough.
Oh, it's yeah. And yeah, I can't remember the guy who did that rewrite for War of the Lions version.
Was that an Alexander O. Smith thing? I feel like it was.
Might have been. Let me look at this up.
I will also yeah, he's done a lot of like the Square Enix sort of like rewrites. Especially like the high, most of the Square Enix like high fantasy sounding like localizations, there's a good bet that it's been done by him. I do not. I At a glance, I cannot find any particular evidence that this was him. So it may have just been kind of like, taking the style that he established with like, gosh, Vagrant Story, which I think might have been one of his first ones that he did for Square Enix and like went with that because looking at they mentioned that he worked on Tactics Advance and Tactics A2, but they do not mention War of the Lions. So they may have just been like kind of do it in the same like style. So who's to say? But
Gotcha. Yeah, this is kind of the thing that always irks me, I guess, which is kind of unfair, but the reception for War of the Lions' new translation was frequently commented upon. Reviewers felt that while its narrative was florid, even Shakespearean, it was an improvement over the original, which was described as confusing and convoluted. However, I'm going to kind of diverge off of this. It's very divisive. There are a lot of people who don't like the War of the Lions version because it is florid or even Shakespearean.
yeah, I've heard this as well throughout the years, and I don't know. I think I only ever played the original Tactics, which definitely had kind of a weird localization. I've seen a lot of the War of the Lions translation, like on various streams and YouTubes and things, even though I've not played it. So I'm pretty familiar with how it sounds, but I don't get that opinion. But okay.
Yeah, I guess like to steal like the one from Ygraph when him and Ramza are like this is I think chapter 3 when you have to 1v1 him bro for a moment when you run into him he's like like Ramza's like, Wygraf, you live, and then Wygraf's like, I have lived for this, Ramza. How long has it been since we last met? And then there's that little back and forth, and Ramza's like, you're just a thrall for the church now. And then the one line or thing that really kind of sells it for me is that Wygraf's like, what troubled sleep have you known to speak of my dreams? No matter how sweet, a dream left unrealized must fade into day.
That is very good.
Like, oh man. And because it goes into the kind of the Shakespearean bit, because it's like, only with power can dreams be made real. I see the truth of it now. What good dreams without that power? You think me a thrall? So be it. Your inventum words succor me. For when at last you yield, as you must, their poison will consume you. And it's like, oh, that's so good. But some people are just like, it's a little too much. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much, but maybe it, maybe that's a thing where like some people just don't have that part of their brain where that sort of thing appeals to them.
Right. Yeah.
Which I guess I can understand.
Yeah. Different structures. I mean, there's people who who really liked the Forspoken dialogue because of how much more approximate it was to just everyday speech that you would hear.
For what little I looked into all that, like I did watch a couple videos, and I was like, I've seen better writing, I've seen worse writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just kind of whatever, and I don't really care.
Yeah, people got really puffy about that.
Yeah, they sure did.
It's like, okay. So
gotta find something to be mad about, though.
I know,
what else
right?
are you gonna do if you're not being angry at a video game? Like what else is there to do?
We've evolved, devolved, side-volved from gotta go fast.
Every direction
gotta be mad.
evolve.
right. We warped digivolved into gotta be mad. Goodness gracious. All right. Well, I think we should probably take a break here and then get into the topic at hand. What say you?
Let's do it.
All right. So we're going to take a break and we'll be back. And welcome back. Yeah. Goodness gracious. That there is Haigoku Lullaby, or, Lullaby of a Deserted Hell.
Deserted Hell is a good translation for it, actually. I was kind of struggling, like, how would I translate this? But that's a good one.
Yeah, because that link I sent you for the Toho Wiki, that's the one they went with. I'm like, that's a good translation for it. Because
I'm just noticing this has translations in it. Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah, the people who put that together. Anyways, just to throw it out there, the rest of the songs are provided by me. This is Knights of Round 2, which is a Dojin album from like Comiket 75.
In 2008, we say as we turn to ash before your very ears.
This is just from one of those Toho games that I've never played, but I like it. It's nice. It's the last song in the album.
That actually, I wasn't paying attention to that when I was looking at the track order, but this kind of makes sense.
It sort of plays itself out, not in like a
Yeah,
like a okay, we're done, everybody kind of close up shop, but it just sort of fade like a fade out compared to a lot of the other songs.
it is. And like the first thing, like at the beginning, I was listening to this thinking like, boy, it's taking Lullaby a little literally. But then like it's the more it kind of got going, the more I liked it because what I found very interesting here was that the main like lead line is done on what sounds like a synthesized accordion, which is very unique. Like you don't have a lot of like lead lines done by accordions, synthesized or otherwise,
Right.
in video game music. And the guitar was very like in the background, like you could be forgiven even for not being able to pick it out. But it's very clean. Like I know that might be a weird way of describing an instrument, but it's like extremely clean and like clear guitar sound that's kind of like there if you want it. But otherwise you can just ignore it because this song is basically like the keyboard and drum show, pretty much.
Yeah, and with that like the that accordion synthesizer bit, it almost gives me like a ship leaving port.
Yeah, I can absolutely, which is very again appropriate for like an ending of an album, right? The ship's yeah, you're not on the ship, you're staying here.
Right.
Here we go.
And that's where we're at. We're staying here because we
Right.
have a topic to talk about.
We missed it. We missed the ship.
Yep,
So we're
so-
talking about this.
Make it so dour. Well, I guess we're gonna.
Sorry, I'm being forced to be here. Someone help.
Oh goodness, but yeah. So I'd mentioned this in like a few last kind of couple power on wow Trussler ramblings is that I I was opening it up to bring guests back and stuff like that because A, I've been having fun with it, and B, I noticed that sometimes I'm like I just don't know.
Right.
And I think after a while, it's like, well, maybe you should get other people who might help you a little bit there.
Imagine that.
I know, right?
If only people would.
So, yeah, and I had put that list together and put it out there, and then you were kind enough to make this a probably number one priority for the topic of physical possession.
Yes.
Of and I had a little, not all of them, but a majority of them have some sort of questions or something to them, and yeah, it's is there a point to having the shiny thing? Is there a need? So before really going and kind of jumping into it, what made you want to pick this topic?
I have a little bit of a weird relationship with this topic, which I guess we can get into the details of at some point. But like, I'm very this is not explicitly a video games podcast, but I mean, often there's video game talk on it. So I think it's safe to say that a lot of video game playing people, will either tend to fall into like, do I buy my games all digitally? Do I buy them all physically? I'm sure there's some people who cross over into both, but like, as a person who plays video games and has fairly strong opinions about that, like I feel some way about physical possessions when it comes to some things and a different way when it comes to others. So like I'm wildly inconsistent, I should say, myself. And even beyond that, just like thinking about as spoilers to a certain extent, someone who has quite a few physical possessions, I would say. I struggle sometimes with, for as much as I like them, like ultimately, like what good is this doing me in the end? So I have what I think are complex feelings about it. So kind of giving myself a chance to like work them out live, I guess, sounded like it's sort of an appealing thing to me.
Uh-huh. Okay. I know. I know with this topic in general, and I think I might have mentioned it to you, and I know I've mentioned it. I think in either the last or the like the one before it. It really kind of hit me about like the Kirby's and the slimes that I have.
Hmm.
And even with like the game, like I probably about 98% of the games that I still have that I lug back over here, not quite physically, but shipped them
On
back
your
over
back,
here. Yeah, right.
swimming
It's
back
like
to
swam across the
America.
Pacific, just kind of.
Those cardboard Super Famicom boxes, trashed, well, completely waterlogged.
Who would have thunk it? you know, but they have been in totes for years.
Right.
Like part of it's just because of situations and just like not really having the, I guess, gumption or like,
Right.
oh yeah, I want to get these out. But another part of me is like, oh, but if I'm gonna be moving in a year, I don't know if I want to repack all
Right.
this.
No, honestly, like the thing that can kind of be out on Front Street because it's so obvious is like for someone who moves with any kind of frequency, like it's very easy to argue for minimalism to some degree, right? Like
Right.
moving physical possession sucks. Like there's no one who likes doing that. Even if ultimately the importance of having the object outweighs the inconvenience of having to move it, like it's undeniable that it sucks.
It is not a fun process. And I was thinking about this. On average, throughout my life, I have moved every 3 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes very, very far away, or sometimes
Yeah.
a decent distance. But it's been like every 3 years I have moved, and it's just like, well, okay. I mean, I know that's not nearly
Yeah.
as frequently as some people, but it's enough for me to be like, I don't know.
It's enough to be wildly inconvenient. Like 3 years seems like a long time, but when it comes to having to pack up your life and move, like anything less than 10 years is too frequent for me, to be honest.
I have a coworker. She just turned 21.
Quit being so young.
I know, right? She just turned 21 like 2 weeks ago or so, and we were just kind of having a chit chat about that because she's not moved at all, and she's like, "That sounds miserable." I told her that, and I was like, "I don't know. I think it'd be kind of miserable to be living in the same spot for
Yeah, they
21
both
years."
have their downs for
Right?
sure. Like that's, I don't know. I can see both sides of that argument.
Yeah, it's just kind of a funny thing to have somebody be in a completely on the opposite side of it, looking,
Yeah.
going, "Oh, that sounds awful," and me looking at that, going, "Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds awful."
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's like I have a bunch of books as well.
Books
Like,
honestly are the worst ones to move in my opinion. Like they get heaviest the quickest. Um yeah, and that might explain part of the reason I am with certain types of possessions, but
I was gonna say the affliction of the backlog is not strictly held to games, right?
oh, absolutely not.
Like books are just as people who like to read or dabble in the whole reading the books. That
Yeah.
that's another kind of nightmarish endeavor
Yeah.
to just dive into because they can be super cheap,
Yeah, way cheaper than games in a lot of cases.
right? And
And it's also time consuming, maybe not as time consuming as a lot of games, depending on how fast of a reader you are, but
or how thick the book
certainly,
is,
yeah,
right?
certainly it takes some time.
And it's got unless you're reading off of a Kindle, but then that's kind of bleeds into that physical possession kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. If you have the book, like you're stuck with having the book, like,
Right.
and if you don't have proper light source or if you're driving or something, you can't.
The light source, I mean, maybe if you're using like an OG Kindle or something, that's a problem. But like if you're using Kindle on any modern
I
tablet,
mean
like you
more
have
of,
control over brightness settings
I
and
mean
things.
physical books versus the Kindle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're
Yes, yes,
good. You're
yes.
good.
No, absolutely. Yeah, in a car, you're up a creek basically if you're reading physical books at this point.
Right, and that's the only way I read. I read books. I don't read through Kindle. But I will say this: anybody buy my book, buy it through Kindle. I get more money that way. Jokes aside, but
I did buy it through
oh,
Kindle,
thank you.
so
Yeah, you get like authors get a lot more money that way through Kindle as
I
opposed
did
to
not know that
oh
actually, but less printing involved in the self-publication process, I suppose, is maybe the reason for that. But
that, and I think also I kind of lowballed the physical price.
I
So
see. Okay,
like I
okay.
the one bookstore nearby that's I'm actually going to for an event at the end of the month to be a part of for like local authors.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Um, when I gave her my book so she could sell it in her bookstore, she looked at me and she was like, $8.99, huh? I was like, yeah, too cheap, I know. And she's like, yeah, you're right, too cheap. And I was like, I appreciate that kind of honesty to call me out
Well,
on that.
lesson for next book, maybe, if
Oh,
you
for
choose to
sure.
take it.
Right, for sure. But yeah, that all aside, books are another kind of thing I have in totes
Sure.
because there's like I have such so my coffee table or not my coffee table, my kitchen table actually has a bookshelf.
Oh, like built into like the lower half of the table.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think maybe you showed it on stream once or something,
I
which is
might have
why I'm remembering
might have
this,
took a
but
picture of it,
yeah.
but like that's to kind of navigate around having like some of these physical possessions and stuff is like, oh, I'll just incorporate getting a bookshelf
Yeah.
coffee table. So it's like getting two birds with one stone, even though this thing is going to be a complete nightmare
It would be
to.
unused space anyway, right? Like the bottom part of a kitchen table. Like you
Yeah,
don't
right?
do anything with that.
Yeah.
Put
So,
put your legs under it, I guess. So maybe that sort of
yeah,
makes you
it's.
unable to do that. But
Yeah, who needs those? Leg space. Psh.
who needs legs?
Yeah, who needs
What have they
legs?
ever done for me anyway?
Not like they held me up or anything. Oh, but so some of this I guess how'd you phrase it? Um, I guess because you have this teetering of certain things.
Hmm.
I guess for myself coming out with it, it's I outside of I can think of one thing in particular, which is an old teddy bear that I still have
Hmm.
from when I was a wee little lad. Like outside of that, if my place, God forbid it ever happens, knock on wood, ever like caught fire, that's the only thing I would like hope I'd be able to salvage,
Gotcha.
kind
Because
of
it
thing.
is irreplaceable, really. Like yeah.
That thing's gone on more adventures than I have. That's been up to
Right.
Alaska. It's been to India. It's been like that stuffed animal's traveled more than I have.
How is that?
It somebody I was dating was in India for a few months and
Oh,
she took it with her.
I see. Okay, okay. Interesting.
That was my like her connection to me.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. I was like, what? Did you think it was real? Did you like, you're going on vacation to India? Have a great time, buddy.
Right. Slap a travel sticker on you and just have a ball. Oh, but like for yourself there, do you have a lot of those kind of if there's a fire, these are the things I'm saving.
Um, Honestly, I kind of wish I did. Like, I'll be honest, like most of my stuff is not like anything that has that particular sentimentality attached to it. Like I don't
Okay.
particularly own anything that I've had since I was a kid. It's stuff I've bought. Um,
Hmm.
and for the most part, and not like a lot else. And I mean, some of it is signed and some of it was, gotten through a particularly memorable circumstance or whatever. So I mean, that's not to say there's nothing I have any, sentimentality for, but for the most part, it's like things that were bought with money because I wanted them. And so like if my place caught fire, like of course, that would be incredibly unfortunate for many reasons. But in terms of like possessions, there isn't really anything that I'd be like, no, I can never get this back. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but not a lot is really coming to mind in terms of that.
I the It's kind of interesting to put that because I was wondering how much of if there was anything like, because I guess for me with the Kirby's and the slimes, part of it, and it was something that after you had picked this topic that I was mulling over in my head,
Right.
another part of it was that it was I would see these things and they would make me remember or kind of reflect back on those times teaching in Japan, because I'd have a lot of different like Kirby's or slimes and stuff for the kids, because it worked as a way for them to, maybe they might be like really anxious to try to interact with me.
Right. And like it's something like linking all of you because these are characters and these are characters that I also like. Look, we have something in common.
Exactly. So like slimes, Didakuma,
Right.
Didakuma was kind of my spirit animal. Like I wish I could just be lazy.
Just
like
you
that.
you want to be Ryakuma, really. Not so much collect them.
Right. It's just more of like, oh, this would be, as much of a schmuck as I am to myself, it would be really nice to just be lazy. But I know I can't
Right.
do that, so I guess somebody else gets to do it for me.
A constant reminder of a fantasy which you will never be able to live.
Always out of arm's reach.
Yes.
But yeah, those were the things that, like, those three things, because it's like, the girls wouldn't really care for slimes or maybe Kirby because they just
Sure.
don't care for games, but the
Right.
Didakuma, or
Right,
vice
right.
versa kind of thing. And so it worked out that there was a way to try to like form that bond without it, without them feeling like too much pressure to try to either figure out, or just being completely disengaged to be like,
That makes
this
sense.
is some adult dude, like whatever. I don't, because I'd have to eat lunch with the kids too, right? So it was
Right, which is common for that sort of position, at least from the friends some of the friends I knew who did similar teaching jobs also did that as well.
So yeah, it allowed them to be like, oh, they likes Kirby. What's your favorite Kirby kind of thing,
Right.
or something like that, or draw Kirby, or
Yeah.
and just kind of have fun with it there. And then you can just, it's an easy way to get the ball rolling and then kind of go
Yeah,
from there. So.
I never consider. I mean, I'm sure you liked all of those things just originally anyway, but I never considered. Yeah, and I mean, I knew obviously you taught kids there, but I never considered them as like icebreakers, so to speak. But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why at the end I did the as poorly as was the the snake get up I did for Halloween one year, because that was when not Phantom Pain, but the Ground Zeroes was coming
Oh,
out.
that's I thought you meant like the animal, the snake. I was like, what?
Oh, yeah,
Just
sorry.
dressed as a snake?
Yeah, right, no,
Okay,
it's-
but I should have known.
Well, it was because there was because I went to a different middle school that last year, and they like there was a lot of them that were into Metal Gear Solid, and were
Okay,
like
sure.
hyped for not Phantom Pain, but Ground Zeroes, and so
Yeah.
I purposely was like, all right,
Nice.
I go and buy some camo and all that sort of silly stuff. And
Did
go
you
around.
walk into the classroom and go, "Kochira snake"?
Well, I had a toy gun, which would not have flown here in the States
No,
whatsoever.
yeah.
But
That would not have worked.
I snuck around or sneaked around,
Nice.
and I would turn corners and then point the gun at him and be like, "Ogoku na."
I love it.
Kochura de. Kochura snake. Yes. Oh yeah,
So
but
good.
yeah, it's fun crawling around and everything. And unfortunately, I didn't have any
No
cardboard
cardboard
boxes.
box. Oh
Nah,
well,
nah,
you captured the spirit of it. It's fine.
exactly. It's in the kids. Well, because somebody, I can't remember who it was, on the farewell paper, or like little plaques and stuff that they
Right,
give
right,
and
right.
little
Yeah.
booklets and stuff. I remember a lot of them were like saying, mentioned that as something that was really, that they really enjoyed, and that like one of them in particular was like, I was happy to meet the real Solid Snake.
Oh, that's very sweet, actually.
Right.
That's extremely heartwarming.
Right. It's like, oh. So, but yeah, I guess with like physical possessions, those sorts of things that, like you mentioned, like the sentimentality
Yeah,
stuff, those are the things that like I have, that I'll like be like, oh yeah, but um the other stuff ends up being a clutter, and
sure.
I really don't like living in a clutter because my parents on both sides are hoarders. So it
Ah,
drives me batty to be like, no. So that's why I think it, like, the stuff stays in totes a lot of times, because it's like, I, not that I get anxious, but it's like, I don't need the stuff out.
no, and you're not wrong. Like, I mean, I think it's fair to say that most people who collect a lot of physical objects, like, how often are any of those physical objects actually, being used at any one given time? The answer is almost always never. Um, but for me, just touching on your point of like clutter, like, and I understand that, and obviously it's very dependent on the size of your living space. I don't live in what you would call a giant mansion. Like, I live in a house, an okay size house. It's not gigantic, but as I said, have a lot of physical possessions, but they are all, in my opinion, very neatly organized. Like, I have shelves for all games and CDs and DVDs and things like this. Like, they are all what you would call displayed. And I do not. I can understand a person who would feel clutter even with that, but I, because of the way I organize them, it doesn't particularly hit the this is clutter part of my brain. Even though I recognize I am not actively using these things most of the time. I do not even try to fool myself about that. But to me, that's almost like what makes a difference between someone who's a quote unquote hoarder and someone who just likes to collect things, like
Okay.
organization. Yes, if you just have shit all over and not organized in some fashion, like I would annoy myself by doing that for sure because I like a neat house. But to me, whether it's right or not, displaying them and keeping them organized is the difference between those two things.
That's a good point. And I mean, you can see it in some of those old videos of mine, of like, it started to hit a point where it was like, I'm running out of space.
And that's a thing, right? I mean, that makes total sense. Like, when you run out of space, what are you supposed to do? Like, you buy a storage unit, I guess, if you really want to keep the stuff. But
Right. Yeah, I think that was kind of that limit of me hitting, of like,
yeah,
okay, all right, I need to make sure that I don't get into this, like, I know how my parents are. I know how my grandparents were. Like, only one of them really didn't hoard anything. Like, I need to.
and that makes total sense. Like, I guess I've been lucky enough to never hit that point particularly. I mean, it's not like I'm constantly buying new things, but I think I'm a long way out from running out of space, as it were. But hopefully I can, continue to manage it to the point where that doesn't ever really become an issue.
The I was gonna say, the something that I do, um, and I just had another experience of this that I did with some friends that I met up with. Um, I When I get to know somebody, and like
Hmm.
hang out with them on a mildly regular basis or something,
Yeah.
I get to a point where I will gift them something that connects us in a
Sure.
certain way. So like one friend likes things like the Ren Fair and that sort of
Hmm.
thing, and I have like a glass like a glass potion sort of thing with a cork top that you could
Oh,
like put to
sure.
your
Yeah.
belt, have it for a belt loop. And so I
Yep.
gave that to him, and then my other friend, she likes gnomes, and I had like a little gnome, and also she had seen I had this old like wooden little, not chest, but it was like a wooden little container that like I would
Hmm.
just put pins in. And then when one day when she when the both of them came over, she was like oh, this is kind of neat and stuff. And so like a couple weeks later, it's like, oh, here you guys go. I would give them these things, not because it's like, oh, my place is cluttered, but it's like, a
Right.
this is something.
It will mean maybe more to you than it does to me, or something along those lines.
That, but also it's like these are some things that like we kind of have a mutual interest
Right.
or liking, and that here's me recognizing that. um I kind of like that as like in a physical possession kind of way, is to gift that sort of thing, not to be like, ah, I'm decluttering my place, ha 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 ha.
Right, right, right.
Right? So
My clutter goes to you.
right, where I feel like sometimes my particularly with my parents or something, that's what ends up happening, is it's like, we have all this clutter, have some of it, and it's like I'm good. I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah,
And
but I don't want
right,
your cast offs.
right. So, but yeah, I guess that's, I don't know. I felt like I had to bring that up just because I think that's maybe something that, with it like a physical possession kind of thing.
Right.
Like it is. I don't know how to put it. It's like, it's not like it's a, like I would never do it with something because like for example, Sushi was kind enough to send me the Korean wall scroll of the um, Trails in the Sky FC Evolution
Oh,
release.
nice.
So like, you know, I'd never like give stuff that I get from people,
No,
but
of course. Yeah, a gift is a different matter entirely, obviously. Like whether or not you do much of anything with it is another thing.
right,
But
right.
yeah, giving it away or selling it or something is in my opinion, something you should probably not do. But I don't know.
That's if anything, it's like at that point, it's like if you do end up ever going, if, you know, if somebody ever goes that route, it's like, hey, person who gave me this thing, I no longer want
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's the only way you
yeah,
can go around that.
right. And some people like, I mean, honestly, even though I probably wouldn't do it myself, like anytime I give someone something,
Hmm.
unless it really is like coming from a place of like sentimentality from me,
Hmm.
I would just be, I don't say this explicitly, but it's just kind of what I understand in my mind. Like, you can do what you want with this. Like,
Hmm.
keep it, sell it, give it to someone. I
Eat
really
it for
don't
all I care.
care. Like, this is yours now.
Yeah.
And I have no particular right to, comment on what you do with it.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I think, I think I have that mentality that I do because I think like my parents get kind of miffed when I'm like, I don't want this.
Sure. Sure.
It's like, I'm good. Oh, I
Yeah.
got rid of it, or
Right.
something like that. Because like my dad, not so much, except for very very specific things. But my mother gets hyper sentimental about even the
Sure.
most mundane thing.
Right, right, right.
It's just like I can't have that like connection to,
Right.
you know, a toothpick that yeah, a toothpick that grandma held 36 years ago that you have a memory about, because like that's, I guess for me, the
Uh,
really strong negative aspects that I see with like people owning things or keeping possessions of things. And this is where like that one topic I had for rambling about like the photos and stuff,
yes,
it kind of
yes, yes. I remember that
splinters.
one.
It's similar, but it's kind of diverges away from that strongly, because that's, photos of people is much different than just things of thing, having
Oh,
things.
absolutely.
But that's like I've seen the very strong negative aspects of the hoarding and just kind of, oh, I got to keep this. I got to keep this. Like my dad has a bad habit of he likes to have, what would you call, running, just an ever flowing cycle of, oh, I've got a new machine I want to work on.
And
And
like none of them ever get finished,
yeah,
so they all
yeah,
just sort of accumulate or whatever.
yeah, 19 times out of 20, yeah.
Okay.
And so like I've never gotten into tinkering or anything because of
Right.
that. And I think tinkering kind of plays into collecting in a certain way, especially when you get into
Sure.
oh, whatchamacallit, the big robots.
Do they have a name other than big robots?
Yeah, that's Slate. I think it's some, but
Large robots.
yes, large robots. They're the things you put together that you can paint and
Model?
model. Thank you.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
Gunpla.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gunpla.
yeah.
Are you thinking of
I
Gunpla?
am.
Okay.
So
I at first I thought you meant like engineering robots. You know how you have like those college clubs of people who like literally make robots, like actually design and create robots.
oh yeah, the
I thought that's
instructions of
what
our
you
doom.
meant. I thought that's what you meant, but you just meant Gunpla.
I did just mean gunpla. Unfortunately,
Okay.
I was flying a little too low to the ground to soar so high.
Yeah, that can I won't talk out of turn too much, but someone who I used to live with, I think even she will probably admit that she has more, not explicitly Gunpla, but like resin like cast model kits than she
Okay.
will ever be able to do anything with in her lifetime.
Hmm.
She may have sold most of those off by now, for all I know. But definitely there was I have memories of lugging giant totes to and from storage areas and yeah, not I definitely again, organization is the key there. I would never particularly refer to that as like hoarding or anything because it's not like the house was full of model kits every step you took or something. Like they were all very organized, but like boy, there sure were a lot of them. And those things sure do take time to put together and paint and everything. So that the tinkering aspect kind of reminded me of that. Like it's not like they were procured with no intention of doing anything with them. It's just things pile up, and it's like at a certain point, will you ever get to them all?
Mm. Yeah, that's yeah, because you get into like
Not that I don't have shades of that problem too,
the
but
backlog of doom.
yeah.
Uh, so you had mentioned that you kind of have a bit of a, I don't want to say wishy-washy, but
Yeah.
you've got a bit more of a uh,
Yeah. For me, it really depends on the media type.
okay.
As weird as that sounds, but I'll kind of explain here. So the one thing I am nearly 100% digital on, believe it or not, is books.
Okay.
I something like an art book, right? That where you really benefit from having a nice large image. I will retain a physical version of. Not that I have that many art books, but I do have some. So I'm not beyond owning a physical book. But I do not have as many of those as I do other items.
Like you say,
And
beyond owning a physical.
right,
It's just, it is not too far beneath me.
I'll consider it. Uh, But I actually thought a little bit about that in preparation for this and why this is. Like,
Hmm.
why did I convert? Like, why am I so trusting of digital books as a platform when I'm not as trusting of other platforms, which I'll get into in a bit when we talk about that.
Hmm.
And I think it's because, so, I mean, books have been sold digitally for a while now,
Hmm.
longer than maybe not longer than music, but longer than pretty much any other medium, pretty much longer than movies and longer than games in any sort of real way,
Hmm.
right? Because you had Kindle back in kind of like the early mid 2000s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Something, and then couldn't you? You could. There, I thought, yeah, we'll go with that because I thought there was also something else that
There was, but the time my timeline on it is a little bit fuzzy. But what I'm getting at here is like I feel like the reliability and the systems for selling books digitally has been figured out.
mm,
Like I don't I, look. I know Kindle is run by Amazon, and Amazon does not deserve your trust for many, many reasons. It's not my favorite thing about myself that I buy so much from Amazon. But I think at this point they've proven that they can handle the digital publishing of books pretty reliably. They haven't, that I'm aware of, that's the asterisk over this, had any like major faux pas where like suddenly I was unable to access this thing that I paid for or whatever, you know. Um,
no, it's
so
more on like
like,
the back end, people publishing on them
right.
having pains in the tail to deal with.
And I would have to take your word for it there because I've never particularly, gone down that route.
Hmm.
But like I feel whether it's right or wrong, like I can trust that service and give it money and like always have access to the things that I paid for.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I know this will make absolutely no sense that I feel that way when I get into some of the other mediums. So I know I am a person full of contradictions here, but it is just the way I feel. And for things especially, I think what really kind of drove me over the edge to this is manga.
Oh.
Manga start taking up space real quick. Uh, and I'm not like a gigantic manga person, but I do read a few like really long running series with many volumes in them.
Mm.
I would run out of space if I had to have a physical manga book for everything that I read, period. And so it just made more sense to me, especially in light of that, to go digital with that, just because like of the amount of space because you get through a manga pretty quick, right? Even when I read them in Japanese, like my reading speed is such to where it doesn't take me an extremely long amount of time to get through one volume of manga.
That or the and not to take away from it, there are just sometimes panels where it's more of just the
Yes,
artistry
absolutely,
conveying what's going on.
absolutely. And so that's how I reckoned with going mostly digital. Again, I have one bookshelf in my house that has actual books on it. It's not even full. And a lot of it is, believe it or not, magazines, like old Japanese rock
Oh,
magazines
okay.
for another site project that I've been working on for years about the Yellow Monkey and
Hmm.
chronicling all their stuff. And that's only because I have no digital way of getting old 90s Japanese rock magazines. Like I have to buy them if I want to scan them. So, and I do have, like books, like things that I've kept around for various sentimentality reasons and whatever. But it's not a lot.
Mm. As I say with the manga, I have they were the re-releases of Kenshin with
Oh, sure.
the ones where it condensed everything down so they're really small.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I actually got that, and then I want to get Sazan Eyes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I
Uh,
haven't thought about that series in a while.
yeah, right.
Boy.
That's just a curveball. That like I
Yeah.
read that when I was studying at Saitama, because they
Ah.
had it the whole series available at like one of the like one of the dormitory offices. I was like, oh shoot, okay, yeah, I'll start
Oh,
reading
just
this.
like the old manga shelf, just like sitting in
Yeah.
there for people to
Yep.
peruse. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was during the potatoes and green peppers time. So it's like, okay, I'll start reading these. Like that's when I that and started playing Fire Emblem in Japanese, and
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Genealogy of a Holy War. That's when I beat Twilight Princess, which was the first game I like played in Japanese, and I was like, oh, I don't have to.
Oh, wow. What an
Yeah,
interesting game to be your first game that
right.
you played in Japanese.
Well, played and beat, I should say. I
Okay,
should
okay,
be
okay.
fair.
Got
There's
it, got it.
there's
Okay.
Metal Max was the first one, and I still haven't
Okay.
even beaten that one. But but yeah, Twilight Princess, East 1 and 2. Those were like the first handful of games I beat in
Nice.
Japanese. Didn't beat
Very
Genealogy at
nice.
that time because that was too hard.
Yeah, and the vocab, like you went right into the
Oh,
deep end on some
yeah.
of those, like vocabulary wise. That's like playing Metal Gear games and having to learn the word for like nuclear proliferation.
Right.
And like that's just very extreme.
Oh yeah, if I do something and I dive head first, even if it's straight into the
Clearly.
concrete pool. It's like
Clearly.
like that. Well, because I was how my lessons were going on stuff. I got so bored with doing the normal lessons that I was given like
Uh
a secondary kind of after where I would read.
sure.
Like this is where I got to read. Things like Bochan in
Oh,
like
sure. Yeah.
like in Japanese, and Konjiki Yasha, like a lot of I
Okay.
novels and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yep,
I
yep.
knew of them beforehand, but I actually was reading them in Japanese and talking with the like a one-on-one kind of lesson and stuff with the
Right,
teachers
right,
and stuff.
right. Like discussing the subject matter and whatnot.
Right,
Yeah.
that or if there's like, hey, I don't quite understand what's going on here. Like,
Even Bochan, which I've not read in Japanese, I think I only read the translation, but knowing when it was written, I feel like that could have potentially been a little bit challenging.
a little bit, yeah, but it helped because a lot of those kind of older styles of speaking translated really well for me to
That's
understand in
true.
Fire Emblem.
That's very true.
It's like, oh, okay, all right, I get this. This is absolutely no benefit in modern day, but that's all right.
It's fun. I mean, I've definitely played games like that in Japanese. Like, how much of the vocabulary have I retained? Like, probably not a ton,
Right.
but it's fun to like. There's a joy to it to like figuring this stuff out in the moment. Like, if you're far enough along in your Japanese, it certainly sounds like you were, to where you have like you understand how to use the tools to figure this stuff out, or you have access to people to ask or whatever. Like, it is fun.
Oh yeah, I remember the first time figuring out the etymological um, pathway of why they say mosh mosh when they answer the phone. And
Which I knew at some point, but I think has since leaked out of my brain. But
you know, Teira tomoshimasu. Just
of
it,
course,
right,
yes,
yeah, and it's
okay,
like, it wasn't from, it was just me kind of making that connection and
right,
then getting
yeah,
that right,
yeah,
and I was like, oh my goodness, like I understand things. I'm not a complete idiot.
yeah, and like the linguistic part of that is, I mean, like I part of me, even though I think at this point in my life I would never be able to drag myself back to any sort of a formal education for anything because I have no real desire to go back to college, as it were. Like Japanese linguistics specifically would be extremely interesting. I like study track to like go on because even most people who quote unquote know Japanese like may not understand, myself included in many cases, like much of the actual linguistic aspect of it. Now we're veering back into the topic of the last show I was on 8 months ago, so I'll be
That's
careful not to derail
that's
us too much.
Oh, that's all right. Well, yeah. Well, I started it by mentioning the mangas, like those two in particular, kind of like Sazanais and
Yeah, gotcha.
Rurouni Kenshin.
Kenshin is a paternal favorite of mine, so I really feel you pretty hard there. Never read Sazan Eyes though. I know of it obviously, but I've never engaged with it particularly.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of, it's got those typical like what 80s
Yeah, it
90s
would have been
beats.
80s, I think. Yeah,
I think it went into the 90s a bit
I
because I think there's like
probably,
40
yeah,
volumes.
probably. That
So,
sounds about right.
but yeah, just typical beats of that and stuff. It's to me, it's even though it's not the same, I get similar vibes to it as Yu Yu Hakusho.
I guess now that you say it, I kind of group those two together as well. I've also not done much with Yu Yu Hakusho apart from maybe playing a couple of the games.
Nice.
But that Mega Drive one is real good.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, it's a very good fighting game, especially for the time. And I know nothing about Yu Yu Hakusho really, but yeah, they're both sort of like that spiritual like shonen action.
Mm-hmm.
I think is why they fit together so well.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Like, I'm a bit more familiar with both of them. Not so like a little bit of Hakusho, but not like hyper. But
Yeah,
there are similar kind of beats and stuff that I'm like, oh, okay, this is.
yeah,
But yeah. To reel it back from there though,
yeah.
um, with the orderliness, I think you're hitting on something that really really helps clear up something on my end.
Oh,
Well, just in the sense of like why I've really stripped down on stuff when it comes to
right.
like games or books and stuff and why I'm okay with sort of like, oh, I don't need this. I can, if it's books, I can donate them to a library or to
Right.
if they're what have you. Is this it's just kind of keeping things on my end orderly, so it's like
Yeah.
I don't need.
And I mean, look, I'll be the first to admit, like, right, the physical thing that I probably have the biggest collection of is either games or CDs, probably games.
Okay.
And I will admit that there are many titles in there that I will never touch again in my life. Like, I am aware of this. But yet I will probably not get rid of them, at least not anytime soon. And games are definitely the weirdest one for me. Like, I do tend to go more physical. I mean, obviously there are titles where you don't have a choice, and I'm fine with buying them digitally that way. I think a lot of that is a holdover from the days before there were like developed digital marketplaces. Like, there was obviously a time when you had to buy a physical package game or you did not get game at all, right?
Right.
And I'm a little bit older, and I've been playing games for a long time, so part of it is probably because of that. Um, and the other part of it is because I don't particularly trust some of the online marketplaces for video games as much. Again, right or wrong. Is it dumb that I trust Amazon but I don't trust Nintendo? Maybe. I'll admit that might be a little weird,
I don't
but
know. Nintendo. I don't even know how they get online sometimes.
and it's not even just specifically Nintendo. Like, most of these, again, whether it's misplaced or not, I get a feeling that they think about those marketplaces much more fluidly than someone like Amazon does about the Kindle marketplace. Um, I don't have any particular evidence of that, but it's just a feeling I get by how those storefronts are run, and kind of like how, like, look, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but like, there's been many different generations of Kindles, right? It's like we've come a long way technologically speaking from the original like 2005 or whatever Kindle, right? But all of that was architected with being able to have a continuous storefront throughout all those devices, right? Maybe I'll eat.
Continuous in the sense
Maybe,
that you mean the same.
yes.
Okay.
So maybe I'll eat my words one day, but hopefully it's not until after I'm dead and no one will call me out on this. But I have a feeling that the Kindle store will not close. Amazon will not just one day be like, no more Kindle, guys. We had a good run. See ya. Like not like the storefronts for, many game platforms,
Well,
right?
the 3DS and the
Yes, the most recent, the very, very fresh examples, in fact.
right.
And like I understand it's much easier to, in terms of technology and like the architecture of it, see into the future for something like an e-reader,
Hmm.
right? Which is basically what a Kindle is.
Hmm.
Like it's easy to architect that in a way from the start that you preserve the same storefront across all devices. I understand it's a much more complicated affair for a video game console. Believe me, I get it. But I also feel like there's very little effort or caring into trying to keep those alive after a certain point. And yes, I understand that just because the storefront shuts down, suddenly all the download games on my 3DS don't go away. That's not how that works. I get that
Hmm.
too. But also, like, I don't know. There's something
It's
about
a
it that's just
profit
very
thing.
disingenuous to me,
It's,
where it's like it's
yeah.
very much just like, and I understand companies exist to make money. That's basically their sole purpose. I am not naive about this in any way. Uh, but I feel like there should be some concern for like, preservation, especially when it comes to games. And like you are basically just making these things inaccessible and you're shrugging about it. And then you have incidents like I don't know if you remember what happened with PT,
Oh
that
yeah.
Konami Silent Hill thing where it's like it was delisted and
Yep.
now, and as far as I know, this is the only example of this, but it is an example you can hold up of distrust being warranted. Like you literally, even if you download it originally, cannot re-download it.
Hmm.
If you delete it, even on a piece of hardware that was authorized to re-download it, too bad. It is
The
gone.
I don't think it's quite the same, but recently, Epic Games got rid of all of Unreal. Like you can't get it on Steam anymore.
Yeah, I hadn't particularly heard about that, so I don't know to what extent it's the same or not,
Well,
but
I think you can still download it if you purchased it.
right. So it's what you would call delisted, which
Yeah.
is normally that's how that works. Like, yes, I can't go and buy a new copy of it on whatever digital storefront, but I, according to this platform, still own the license for it. Therefore,
Right.
I can still get it if I delete it. That's
Right.
not the case with PT. There is no such thing as owning a license for PT anymore. They made sure of that.
Well, what I was going to say with that though is that like they could just like Unreal's been around for Unreal is like
It's old.
it's a old, and I remember a time when we used to go to a place called like internet cafes to
Oh, sure.
to do LAN parties and stuff and playing Unreal Tournament 2000. I it's wild to me that they just kind of shut that down. It's like this is like one of the few ways that anybody, and I get it. It's who's who's really hankering to play a 24-year-old or 26
Sure.
year old game kind of thing. I get it to a certain extent, but in the same hand, like same thing with PT. PT was one of those sort of seminal. It could have been, but
Yeah.
because it was A, so brief, and B, chopped at the knees, that it became this, you know, I don't know how to put it, like just this bright spark that just died out real quick.
Pretty much.
And, and that's because, yeah, there was this, it's this ephemeral moment because you couldn't have a physical copy of it.
Yeah.
And it's only the digital. I like the physical thing always gets to me as well is that with the advent of being able to, as we so affectionately phrase it, sail the high seas.
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
ever since the seas have been high sailed, the I feel that there has come with that a strong depreciation in works.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because
Is
that was
that
another
something?
point I wanted to hit on too.
You're right, and it because and I remember this because I remember when emulating NES games became a
Yep.
huge thing.
I do too.
Yeah, right. And
What
that
did you do when you had access to all those NES games? I bet you did the same thing everyone else did, and you played one for 15 seconds, and then you went on to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one.
right, bingo. And part of that's because a lot of them were trash.
Well, sure.
I will say this: that method was the way that the very first time I beat Blaster Master.
Ah,
Yeah, I that was one of those games I went back to, and I was like, okay, game of my childhood, I am beating you. There is no more to this. But yeah, that's what ended up happening. Is just kind of like, oh well, there's a lot of these, and it's like, okay, okay.
choice paralysis, I almost feel like is a part of that. Whereas like unless you are a extremely wealthy person, which is not me, despite I still think my game collection is pretty modest compared to a lot of people. But unless you are a very rich person who has the means to just buy every physical game you could want, like you may not run into choice paralysis, at least not on that same level. And when I'm, especially with the retro stuff, like I admit that this isn't as much the case for discs, probably because of the physical weight and the physical feeling of a cartridge versus a CD. Like whether this is placebo effect or not, I don't know. Like maybe I'm just fooling myself here, but I feel a little bit more of a sense of commitment to playing something when I'm playing it on like real hardware and on a real cartridge or
Oh,
disc or whatever.
okay.
Again, that's maybe, I mean, that's not unique to me. I've heard other people say this, but you absolutely don't have to feel that way. Like it's obviously something I've manufactured for myself or whatever, but I think it's real. I mean, I don't feel like I'm fooling myself. Again, this isn't so applicable when I'm talking about, oh, did I buy a physical PlayStation 5 copy of this game or did I buy it on the PSN store? I don't mean that. I specifically mean in front of my computer on an emulator or on my NES, for example. That's more the situation I'm talking about here.
Yeah, but no, I think I can still play with like the PC because I have a lot of games on Steam and
Sure.
GOG, and like that's always a concern too with Steam because Steam is a little bit more, let's say, miserly with how they approach things, where they're like,
Sure.
yeah, you kind of own it, but GOG is just kind of like, yeah, you guys have it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And that's where the whole murky, like, what a lot of people don't think about is like, what does it mean to own a piece of software? Right? It's like, usually what it means is you have bought a license to use this software that can be revoked at probably any time.
Right. Yeah, no, that is a concern. That's
Again, I know there's a certain tinfoil hat element to this because how many times has that really happened, right? There's not been a lot.
not a lot, but
I'll admit it, but the fact that it can happen and there is some precedent for it is enough to justify that to me.
yeah, no, that is a concern, and like I get it. I mean, not only just that uh, the revoking, but also just the fact of it sort of not quite lock and step, but marches the same path as emulator in the sense that like when like Steam has those summer sales or the Humble Bundle or anything like
Right.
that, you're inundated with just here's 60 games that you just bought for $2 because you were kind enough to
Yeah.
pay $2 or whatever.
Encouraging you to go, for lack of a better way of putting it, like quantity over quality. Not that those games can't be quality, obviously. I'm not saying that, but very much throwing in your face, like, look at the amount of stuff you can get.
Right, and
So much.
it is ephemeral. It's no, it's really nothing. It's just a game, and yeah,
Right.
I have my qualms with games because I part of that's because of what do you balance with fun? I mean, you've heard me kind of complain, balancing the fun versus
Yes.
like how much time you want to put into
Right.
something. Um, that it's like to me it's kind of insidious because you don't have to pay a lot for it. Where at least like a book you don't pay a lot, but if it's
Right.
if anything it allows your imagination to have to do the work for it kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Which I know
Absolutely.
that's kind of me being a bit biased towards my books, but
Oh, I mean, I don't do it now as much as I'd like to, but especially when I was younger, like I read a lot, so like I think that's accurate.
gotcha. Um, but I think because it marches in that same path as emulation, it does that bad thing of devaluing
Yeah.
all of those sorts of games. And so the ones that really kind of stick out are like those poignant ones that either they're just really stylized or
Right.
somehow do rise above. What's the one? I know a lot of people really liked it. It's you're a detective, and it's like by
Um,
choices and stuff, and you're like you don't remember who you are, kind of
oh
thing.
God, why am I blanking on the title for this? Disco Elysium.
Yes, Disco Elysium. Like
Yeah.
that's always one that really gets thrown out there. That that one sticks in my head. Like I've seen somebody stream it for a little bit, and I'm like, I don't really see the interest in it myself. But I'm just kind of like, people have fun with it.
Right.
But a game like that, or a game like um, the ones that had already had a foundation, like the remakes of Dead Space and Resident Evil 4.
Sure.
So they've already got a platform that is very sturdy from them to
Right.
leap from. So
Incredibly sturdy.
right. So it is easier, but even then, some of them falter. Like look at Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime came
That's
out and
true.
just sort of these other two are like so much more shinier that they're just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, okay, that's nice, Metroid Prime. Go back to bed.
Yeah. I mean, people talked about it for a few days, but that's sort of how the game world moves now. Like you're fond of pointing this out. And you're not wrong, to be sure.
It makes me mad.
There's
But
too much stuff, man. I'm telling you, if they just stopped making games for like 10 years, like we'd all be fine.
well,
Like
you say
it'd
that,
be
but look what
fine.
happened with COVID, right? There was they just kind of really put the brakes on a lot of things for a moment.
Yeah, things got delayed, but like it's honestly, it still didn't feel like the release was slowed down. Like it was hardly like they just stopped making
Oh,
games
that's
for a
fair.
year.
That's fair.
Some things just got delayed longer than people would have liked.
You mean cold turkey? 10 years, nothing new.
I mean, it sounds like I'm joking, and I say this knowing it would never happen, obviously, but like I'd be pretty okay with it if it did somehow.
It's survive. Um, the I guess that's part of the crux of the issue as well. Of and I find it interesting because we're kind of inverted on this, where you are
Mm,
good with the electronic version of
yeah,
books and
we're
then
very
games.
inverted.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I'd rather have the physical book. Maybe it's just because I like the um, what's the word?
The tactile,
Tactile. Thank you. Yeah,
tactile,
tactile. I
yeah.
want to say textile. I'm like textile's not right.
Text. Yeah, I love towels. They're great.
All right. Yeah, the tactile, just kind of feedback of it, and just
And I
having it.
totally understand. Like I really do get that. I just like I don't know. It was just something I was willing to sacrifice, and honestly, it's probably manga's fault.
Well, no,
But
that's
but it is what it is.
right. No, and that's a good reasoning for it. Is just yeah, manga will be quick to just be like, oh, okay. I mean, and especially if you're into even just say One Piece or something.
Which I am. And
Well,
honestly, it's probably is more specifically One Piece's fault if I'm examining it.
which is how many volumes at this point? 600.
No, not 600.
I'm teasing.
I'll look, but because I'm fairly current, it's a 102, I believe.
Okay.
Right now, 105 maybe actually.
Gracious, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I cut over to digital on that a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And,
I really don't blame you. But like with games and stuff, I think part of it too was the pricing of it. So
Sure.
like I had bought a Wii when I bought a Wii very early on when I got to Japan during Saitama because I knew I would hit a point where I was like, I need something to entertain myself because there's going
Sure.
to be a stretch in time where I'm just not going to have anything. The Wii was cheap at that point. It was 2008. It was,
Yeah, no, we were to the point where basically no one wanted one anymore. So.
yeah, it was pretty quick, but it had the virtual
Yeah.
console and stuff. So it's like,
Yes.
oh, I can buy some of these old classic games for like 500 yen or maybe 800 yen or something. Sure, I'll go that route because instead of I'll have to buy a system or have to buy the game for it because I did not.
Which you also did do to an extent.
To an extent.
I remember those old videos.
But this was before that.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like
This was like you just arriving, basically.
no, this was before working. This was when I was studying.
I see. Okay. Got it.
So like I studied and then went back, finished up a year, and then went back.
Got
But
it.
I had sold that Wii that I had because I wanted to go somewhere and I was like, well, I need money. Okay, get
Sure.
rid of it. But I needed something to kind of I knew I needed something to just preoccupy me. Plus, my one buddy was getting Brawl, and we knew Brawl was coming out. And we both
Oh,
wanted to play it.
gotcha. Okay.
So it was something. It was planned in advance, a couple months, because I got there in October, beginning of October, and stuff. But I think that was part of it there as well. Is it's like, okay, I can just have it all on this one little thing, and I'm fine with that. I don't need like when it comes to a game, I don't necessarily need the shiny. I know a lot of people really like the deluxe editions of stuff, and I do have a deluxe edition of Thrakia 776. Sue me. Actually, please don't. I don't need that kind of headache, but
I can't afford to. Don't worry.
but like only in very specific instances. And I know I used to be really bad about that when I was working over there, where I would be like, "Oh, it's a new East game. Sure, give me the deluxe edition." And it's like, I don't freaking need. And it's, I guess with games, it's more of I just want to like play the game
Sure.
or something, and I don't unless it's like one that I really like. But that's kind of the crux of the issue at that point, right? It's like, how will you know you really like it?
Right. I've already invested, especially with some of those deluxe editions. Like I myself, dude, I won't say I have none, but like I don't have too many of like the giant boxes with the statue of whatever Master Chief's head or whatever, thing, the crazy thing that they give you. Like I don't really buy into physical games on that level as much. Like again, there are exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
But like it really has to be something special for me to go in on like the giant box with the crazy pack-in with the Master Chief head or whatever. Like most of the time I'll just be like, nah, I'm okay with the standard one. It's fine. There's definitely been some shmup stuff, which has been big crazy boxes that I've broken those rules on, but I understand is my point, because those are more expensive and they tend to take up a lot of space. So especially living in Japan, like you don't got a lot of space, probably not even in Saitama.
No. That was because I was also in the dorm too, so it was like,
Then you really didn't have a lot of space.
It was
Like my bed is limited edition ease boxes. This is what I sleep on. I put a sheet over it and I convince myself that I'm happy and comfortable.
But Yes.
Good thing you weren't doing videos back then,
Oh,
because that would have
right,
been
right.
one to see.
Somebody would find me and wring my neck. I was like, "What are you doing, you monster?" um, I so you have these things that you mentioned. Is there a point where you ever just sort of phase things out?
Um, I haven't ever done it with games. Games, again, this could change at any point in my life. Um, but for now, like I have not particularly sold too many games that I've bought in the last I mean, I do not own like my childhood video games anymore, for example. Like I'm not one of those collectors, and like I went through a period where I decided, I don't care as much about video games anymore, and those got sold. But like since I started quote unquote collecting in, I don't know, maybe 2008 or something, and most of the stuff I collect is Japanese versions, especially when it comes to retro stuff. I have not particularly gotten rid of anything. Like I said, even when I don't think I'm going to touch it again. But also, probably that's been because my collection is not so large to where it's unwranglable.
Okay.
I could not tell you off the top of my head how many games I have, but it fits on, a few like nice long shelves. And so I've never had to cross that bridge. Other things that I like much more lightly collect, like say various figures for like I'm not particularly a figure collector, just in general, but I'm not made of stone. I'll buy a figure of a character that I really like sometimes. Like it does happen. I've definitely stepped back and looked at that and been like, I've gone too far. Time to sell some stuff. And similarly, I have that kind of down to like one curio cabinet.
Okay.
And I'm like, if it can't fit in the curio cabinet, I don't need it. So again,
Yeah.
why do I put limitations on myself for some things and not others? I don't know. You explain myself to me. I have no idea.
It sounds like you've mentioned you just kind of have the priorities of
It
I
is
like
priorities,
this,
I
and
think, and I've
yeah.
decided that games are number one. The other thing, which I alluded to, that I haven't particularly ever phased out and maybe won't, is CDs and like concert DVDs, specifically of Japanese artists. When I go to Japan, I usually buy two things, and that's music and games. And so for CDs, like again, kind of like games, like they don't ultimately take up that much space unless you get into like, the big old crazy editions, which certainly exist for CDs as well, just like they do games.
Right.
But your average CD, like you can fit quite a bit of those on one shelf, right? Like it's not a big space eating monster. And the reason I do it, especially for Japanese stuff, is twofold. One, it wasn't really until recent years that you could even get any of that stuff digitally, internationally, very easily, or
Right.
stream it or whatever. Like the most reliable way used to just be buy the disc and rip the disc. And second, like I feel like, especially with Japanese ones, that there is a use case for having the physical item, because often, even still now, like their lyric books, they have a lot of cool photography and liner notes in them sometimes, which you would not get from a digital version. And I mean, maybe you don't care about the artist that much, so it's fine. But often stuff I will bother to buy physical copies of, I do care about the artist that much, and I would like to read that stuff and see that stuff. And a lot of the times they'll come with like bonus DVDs of like concerts that aren't released in any other form. Like you can't just buy the DVD; you must buy the album that came packed with the DVD. And for like, I really like to go deep on musicians that I like. Not deep on like everyone I ever listened to a song by, but like when I hone in on an artist and I'm like, I love this artist. Like I love almost everything they do. Like I will generally go pretty deep and I will want to watch concerts. I will want to listen to every album, sometimes chronologically because I have a horrible brain disease. Um, that stuff is very convenient for that. Like you can't buy a lot of that stuff digitally, you
Hmm.
know? I mean, there's sailing the high seas for it potentially. But even then, with some of that Japanese stuff, if it gets obscure, like where are you gonna find that? You
Right.
know, even if that was your thing. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I can explain to you why I buy these things physically, but I mean, obviously, whether it's a good reason is up to the person listening to me explain it, I guess.
Well, I think this ties into something we kind of talked a little bit before off air. Um, the Dojinshi albums and stuff that I
Yes.
have. Like I like
What choice did you have with those? You had to buy the disc. You couldn't
yeah,
get it
because
another way.
you could only hear. I mean, they would have some songs of their own on websites and stuff, but a lot of those websites are defunct now. Heck,
Right.
like the Big Baddie, like or at least one of the Big Baddies, that
Yep.
SSH. Um,
Yep.
he got rid of a lot of old stuff, and it bums.
Saitama Saishu Heiki, is
Yes,
that okay? For those
yeah,
who don't know.
yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's Saitama's ultimate weapon.
Yes.
Like, he had a bunch of wonderful old songs that there's probably some of them buried on YouTube, just kind of
Probably.
sneakily hidden, but there's there's a lot of them that I used to have downloaded, but then the what I had them downloaded on that computer went.
Hard drive wipe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's like I they're completely gone to me. And
Yep.
his website, he updated it and changed and got rid of a bunch of songs and put on different ones.
Yep.
Like he's he has a YouTube channel now and stuff that he puts up things, and he's got a SoundCloud, but it's like
Probably doesn't have everything though from like the entire time he's been doing music.
right, and it's just kind of like these are like the album that I'm sharing songs from today, Nights Around Two.
Yeah.
It is 15, approaching 15 years old, and unless somebody was kind enough to put these onto some sort of zip file into what archive.org or whatever that.
Which is kind of doubtful for Dojin like I don't know, maybe because it's Toho, maybe someone did. But like some of the other stuff you've shared, like the other album that we were talking about on Discord yesterday, like that's not on archive.org. I doubt it.
The Dios one.
Yes.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's
And like I haven't attempted to look, so who knows, I could be wrong, but my gut feeling is good luck finding a disc of it now.
right. Yeah, because it's yeah. Who knows? I mean, with the I don't want to say flaky, but it is kind of flaky. That sometimes
Yeah.
with it's just kind of the nature of amateur artists, and I don't mean
Yep.
amateur as in not good,
No.
just in the sense that is not their profession. It
Right.
is it is a hobby that they're extremely passionate about, or it's an outlet for them to be passionate about something,
Right.
and so that their job stressing them out, they can just go to this and have fun with it,
Right.
and whatnot. But it is kind of that flaky nature of
Yeah.
I can get this out there. I mean, truthfully, that's kind of how I felt that I treated the YouTube channel for a very long time. It was just sort of a flaky thing that I would kind of do,
Sure.
and then I had all my other business nonsense to take care of
But at least it's archived on YouTube.
until YouTube goes down.
Well,
Dun dun dun.
hopefully that does not happen at this point, but
Right, right.
it's been around for a bit now.
A few years. But I mean, I could download them all, but I need like an external hard drive or something
Yeah,
for.
I haven't looked in your archive in a while, but you've got to have quite a few at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
You don't want to know.
It's funny because I'll look and see some of the just old videos and stuff, and I'm just like, Wow.
Oh, that's the nature of it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the progression. That's how it goes.
Uh, um. Yeah, I don't even know how many. Let's see. I have 221 videos.
I'm actually surprised it's not more.
Well, I mean, I would have those spats where I would put out stuff real quick and then I wouldn't do anything for a while.
Suppose that's true.
So,
Yeah. And I
um,
can't remember exactly what year I discovered your channel, to be completely honest, but like there was a good bit there by the time I found it. And this was like during the heyday of like, I don't want to say heyday, but like you, and I think you talked about this with some, I can't
it
remember.
would
I
have
think
been
it
with
was
Slade.
Slade. Yeah. About kind of like what gaming YouTube used to be like in kind of like the mid later 2000s before it sort of became what it is now. No judgment attached to that. It was just different.
Right.
But like it was definitely in the heyday of that.
Okay.
Like I probably found you because of Happy Console Gamer or because of, something like that. And like it was definitely during that time of like, and again, this is not a knock in any way. Like I am an English speaking guy in Japan and I have access to all this cool game stuff. Watch me, make my channel about this. Not saying your channel was explicitly about that, but many people's were.
Yeah, mine was kind of more of a, it was
Yeah.
always
You were a little more variety than
like a
that, but
vlogish sort of thing, but
yeah.
also games and stuff is just kind of, this is neat. I lied. It's because YouTube lied to me, and I'll stick with that story. I have 473
That
videos.
sounds more right to me.
So,
I would have guessed somewhere in the 400s, just, apropos of nothing, like without seeing a number.
yeah, like even some of the like very early videos, like one was about, and I tried to I guess bifurcate it with the Gaiden gaming versus the Gaiden ones, and the Gaiden ones were not about
Yeah, yeah,
gaming,
yeah.
so
That's
like
right.
convenience stores and just how
I
ridiculous.
I remember the convenience store one weirdly enough. Like of all the ones to remember, like even semi-vividly, I don't know why I remember that one
I just
of all videos.
convenies are just great. That's there's
And that was like after I had been to Japan for the first time, so it's not like your video was not like my first look ever into a Japanese convenience store. I think it was like in that big gap between trips for me, so I was really feeling like I needed that hit. Like I need to see somebody walk through a kombini right now. Oh, there it is. There we go.
but yeah, that, or like look here, it's like I got the just like a random silly video of towel and cup, because it was like a little cup, like a little cardboard cup, and then there's a little handkerchief in it, or hand towel. I'm like, oh,
Huh.
that's really, that are talking about Koku Ichibanya. Truly.
Did you, boy, now you're making me want to go back and watch some of your old videos.
Please don't. But well, no, it's just, yeah, like I really should probably redo some of these. um I know I redid like Moncho no Nazo, and whatnot, but like
You mean
oh
you're not going to go back to Japan and redo the Kombani one?
unfortunately, yeah, that's not really
Okay.
on the
Well,
docket
fair
anytime
enough.
soon. But no, like
The game ones you could totally redo.
right, to redo those in more of what the style I have now and whatnot. Like Rudra no Hiho, I really want to do that one again. Like,
Still very under talked about. If that's
seriously.
probably a better way of putting it than that, but
Well, it's just, it's just, it's like, oh, you got Live a Live
yeah,
and all these others. Like, this would
which
be a
is hot
perfect game,
again. That's popular again.
perfect game to do it for. But yeah, but Divergence is all aside. Was there any other like really big things you had noted about for this topic that?
I mean, I guess the last thing I had that I wanted to touch on was, and probably this is not a thing unique to me, and I'll say this, but it is like it is a problem, but for me, it is a very controlled problem because I've never gotten myself in any particular financial trouble over it. Like a certain amount of why I own the amount of stuff I do is definitely retail therapy, right, wrong, or whatever. I don't engage on it in a toxic level, or a life ruining level. Like I'm very much in control with the amount of money that I spend at any given time. But sometimes if I got the extra money and I had a rough week at work, like I put together an Amazon Japan order and I'm like, I want this game, I want this album, and this,
Oh.
again, not to crazy extents, but like because I don't know what it says about me, but like at least for a time, having those things does make me feel better.
It's a bit of a dopamine hit, right?
Yeah, it's definitely the dopamine hit, and like that's an aspect of it for me too, and probably is for a good amount of people, I would imagine. Again, a problem if you let it ruin your life, but if you're in control of your spending, and it's a nice little treat that can make you feel better after having a rough week or whatever.
I didn't even think about it because that's not something like I don't.
I mean, I wouldn't say you should do it necessarily if
No,
you don't already.
well, right, yeah, it's not going to be something I explore to be like, maybe I should make myself feel happier with it. Maybe it's because of being like growing up to where and then just kind of spending freely and then kind of relearning the lesson and be like, hey,
Yeah.
don't be that way.
To me, it's the everything in moderation principle, right? Like, I mean, obviously, some people just legitimately don't have the money to do things like that, and that's fine. You shouldn't then,
Right.
unless you can do it without breaking the bank. But like, if you can, like, and it's not particularly hurting you or anyone else, why not? You know?
Yeah, like because I actually just off of GOG because they had their sale, like a spring sale or something. Like I recently bought 3 games: the Omicron, the Nomad Soul,
Oh, sure, yeah.
um, uh, Anachronix.
That one I don't think I know.
I'm probably saying it wrong, but it's from Ion Storm from 2001.
Okay,
Oh, it came out on my brother's birthday. How nice. That and Fates of Ort, which is
that I also don't know.
it's an indie game. It's like an isometric. Um, it came out like a couple years ago, but it's like the Fates of Ort one. It's you have to balance being able to cast magic and not dying because it actually
Hmm.
like takes your health and quote unquote soul to cast magic.
That's an interesting idea,
I was like,
actually.
right. I was like, oh, like, yeah, like Fates of Ord is a retro-inspired fantasy RPG with a focus on strategic action and a story driven by player choices. Which player choices is always a concerning phrase, but it is a tale of sacrifice and difficult choices in a world under threat of annihilation by the avarice uh, uh, force of consumption magic. So, but yeah, if you cast too much magic, you will die.
I like that as a gameplay conceit.
So it's going to be one that I stream and be embarrassingly bad at.
That should be fun, though.
But like for myself, I don't have a like there's not a mechanism for me to be like I don't go your route of oh, I've had a bad stretch and then I this is how I kind of soften that edge. And I don't do that with like I know some people do that by like going to like a bar or
Sure.
or going and traveling or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't really have that for myself. I guess for me it's like oh I'll just go outside or something. I'll just take a
And
walk. I need to blow off some
probably
steam.
that's a healthier way of handling it ultimately. Uh,
Need to blow off some steam because otherwise I'm going to erupt.
I mean, I do that too as well. Through exercise or through walking, which is also exercise. Um, but it just depends on the mood,
Gotcha, gotcha.
For a more fleeting thing, like a walk will beat it out of my system. And honestly, like maybe to a certain extent, I'm lying to myself and saying like I've had a hard, like it's probably the stuff I wanted anyway, right? And I'm just kind
Tricking
of using
yourself.
that as an excuse to like, pull the trigger on it.
The oh, what was I gonna say on that? The shoot, I'll something else that I do that probably like stymies that, and this ties into this because I actually end up getting rid of them after so long, is I journal.
Oh,
And it's not this one journal that I have right now. It is like I'll maybe write something. Oh, one week I'll write maybe 3 or 4 times. Maybe it is a stressful time, and I just need to kind of like
right.
dump it out of my head and just onto a piece of paper.
Sure.
But after I've filled that up, I just dispose of it. Like not like immediately right away, but
Right.
whenever I look at it again, I'll kind of thumb through it and be like, "You idiot!" Like,
Yeah,
like,
as a person who hasn't, kept a journal in many, many decades, I can only imagine that would be most people's reaction going back through their old
right,
journals, to be completely honest.
right. Oh yeah, I'd imagine. But and I don't keep them. I just kind of I eventually I'm just like okay, and then I just get rid of it. It's like
Right.
this is no longer a part of me, and this sort of
Right.
thing. And I know some people might freak out. I know my mom heard that she'd freak out. She'd be like, "Why didn't you keep them? Why would keep them?" It's like no,
But
like
I can understand that being like freeing in a way, to be honest, like hearing you word it that way.
maybe that is what it is. It's like I'm putting whatever stress and stuff
Yeah.
into this sort of box, and then
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I don't know if that's how you meant it explicitly, but that's kind of how I interpreted it.
well, maybe it is, and it's just something I don't think about to where because I
Right.
just do it with I wouldn't say regularity because I there like the one I'm on now, there is a stretch where it's like a couple times a week here, maybe once a week after, maybe a couple weeks later I've got an entry, and then
Right.
a year and a half later I've decided to write into it. It's like
What happened? Where was I?
right. I just kind of that's I think it's just that's how I cope,
Right.
or something that or I have a bad habit of just eating something like ice cream
Sure.
or something. I ice cream or pizza.
I mean, they're both delicious
They are
things.
very delicious, just not on top of each other.
No, no, probably not.
Unless it's dessert pizza, then you can kind of get away with it.
Yeah, I guess so. It's been a long time since I had dessert
Yeah,
pizza,
same
but
here. Like
to
that's
me, it's more just like I'd rather just have the two things separately and not together, but that's just my take on it, I guess. The other thing I wanted to mention before we, wrap this up is maybe to get a little bit darker.
okay.
I'd be lying if I don't constantly consider this, but I do from time to time. Like, I'm gonna die one day, and
That's a dark spin already. All
all
right.
these physical things are, and I know this very quickly gets into the philosophy, which I absolutely do not subscribe to, which is why bother with anything because you're just going to die.
You're right.
Like that's a load of nonsense. I think we both believe that. So I'm not saying why bother with any physical possessions if you're just going to die, but also I do think like one day I am, probably going to have to get rid of this stuff or it's just going to be thrown into a garbage can by a social worker or, if I end up married and, with a partner or children or something by them. So like I have it somewhere in the back of my mind like one day when I feel like, for lack of a better way of putting it, the time is near, like I might just be like It's all going. At least this way I can have some control over who it goes to, and that maybe it's going to someone who wants it instead of in a landfill. Um, but like, I mean, obviously that does not particularly stop me from buying more things, but I do stop and think about it every once in a while, and I'm like, I don't know how this makes me feel.
I'll
So,
just I'll make sure I have a sheet of paper written on it, and then or in my will, I'll just put to steal a line from allegedly, if it was said, Alexander the Great, just put to the strongest.
there you, oh my God, I love it. That's a great idea.
To whoever wants it, come get it.
Yes. Oh my God.
But
That's amazing.
maybe that's truthfully, I have not really like the whole death thing. I have such a I don't want to say blase like a thought on it. I really don't think about it.
And I don't either, to be clear. Like, this
Okay.
makes it think like it's constantly weighing on my mind or something. But, every now and then, right? It's just, it's not with what I would call any sort of frequency. Like, I absolutely am not the person who sits here and think about, one way or the other, I'm going to die. Like, I mean, obviously, somewhere deep down, I'm aware of it.
Right.
But I do not particularly actively think about it either, and I realize that may make it sound like I do, but it's just, every once in a while, maybe it's I don't know what triggers it.
I have the mindset. I can't remember what it's a quote from. I may be paraphrasing it, but what is it? We all owe nature a death, and so
Yep.
like I don't. Like when it comes to the things. Yeah, I would hope that if I was to pass before giving things to whomever, that they would get a chance to rifle through things, because even when I was in high school and stuff, and I'd have buddies come over to my place, they'd always be like, "Man, Taylor, you have like such a weird eclectic." Certainly didn't use that word, but
That's it, right?
right, you just have a weird eclectic of like odd, neat things that.
And that's the reason why I think about, oh, it's just going to end up in a garbage can, because people will look at it and be like, what the hell even is this? Like, I don't know any of these bands. Like, I've literally not heard of Japanese. Who the hell was this guy?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, that's good. Uh, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of. It's like, yeah, it's because they're just those neat things. I would hope the spirit of me getting these neat things, that somebody else, if they did get the opportunity, kind of shifty side eye.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
take this. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
my spirit self would be like, good on you.
I'm smiling down on you or whatever.
Just kind of that spirit where it's like, just sort of, because I'll show you something at the break that I actually just got recently that
Okay.
you might find kind of wild, but
Nice.
it was given to me, so it's like I can't just but also
Right.
I might have to relinquish it, and I'll get more into
Okay.
that after in a moment, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. Having things is kind of interesting, but it's also like, I guess I kind of like the play that I have with it, where I do have this very strong willingness to kind of let something go.
Yeah.
Like I don't like even Fire Emblem, to the point I gave my copy, the Famicom. There we go. I feel like I was saying it wrong. Copy of Fire Emblem Gaiden to a friend of mine,
Nice.
because yeah, he really likes the newer stuff, and outside of this latest one and some of the stupidness that goes on in that story, like he really big Fire Emblem fan. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
He hasn't played any of the oldies.
Well, and he wouldn't be able to because it's in Japanese, and he doesn't know Japanese. But Like it's just
And you
a
need a
and yeah,
Famicom
and
on
he's
top of
Famicom
it.
for it. And but it's like
Like a collector's piece kind
yeah, it's
of thing,
something
maybe.
he I don't know if he'll ever get to Japan, but it's like here's something really cool.
Yeah.
Gaiden's one of my favorites. It's a secret favorite of mine. Like it's just and it's a cool little thing to have. Like I think I have a Famicom. I probably do. I don't know. Like if I do, it's in
We'll
it's
say yes.
well, I might not is the thing. So like at that point, but I also had the remake, and I actually really like the remake, and the I have the Famicom version on my 3DS as well. So it's like I can play it if I really need
Right. You
to.
have ways of playing it
Right,
for sure.
but it's not like I'm hankering to be like, oh, I really need to play this. Darn it, Zach, because I gave it to Zach, who was on.
Right. I need it back. I'm gonna need back that
I need
Fire
it back
Emblem
now.
Gaiden, buddy.
But yeah, it's just like yeah. So I guess for me, when it comes to the like possessions of things, I have this. I guess I don't know if it is a weird thing that I'm just so freely willing to just kind of relinquish things or not, but I don't have nearly as much of a death grip to be like no, never.
I think
Which
it's
I don't want to
probably ultimately more healthy.
Mm.
I do sort of wish I could be like that. Again, if my house burned down today, would I cry because I lost all my things? I mean, maybe for a minute, but life would go on, right? There are many more important things in life to me than those. But I do like having them. What can I say?
Yeah, I don't. I think there's. I think there's a balance that you could have with
Yeah.
that. Like, I'm not saying go hyper minimalist because
Right,
I know
right,
I
right, right.
couldn't do that because there
Yeah.
are some things I like having the Switch. I don't get to play it all the time, but
Sure.
I love playing
Neat.
Overcooked, and that's an
Yeah.
easy way to play Overcooked. But you know, but yeah, I think it's a you can strike a good balance, and like you said, having things being orderly and not
It's
like steering
that
into.
really is the key. Like, do not let them control you. And keep it in balance with everything. And I think you'll probably be doing pretty well.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're going to take a break, and we have quote, and then we'll be on our merry way. So, stick around. Welcome back. That tune there is let's see, Harutama no Yokai Shoujo. It's like Heartmania, but like the I don't even know what the Heartman is or Heartmania.
I don't even know what they were going for with any of this as far as the title or like the any I have no words.
Right. Well, because it could be from something like Toho lore wise.
Yeah, I suspect the Heartman no Yokai Shoujo is probably like a game or something like that, but I'm not super familiar with Toho stuff. But yeah, it's what a title, and what an organ,
Right.
a rock organ that is.
Glorious rock organ. That's, I know some people will appreciate.
I love a rock organ. I'm not gonna lie. You were saying it gave you a Sakuraba vibe. I was thinking Uematsu. I think we both honed in on that because of the organ.
Pretty much, right? It probably more so Uematsu. It's not quite as frenetic as or wild as
Yeah,
Sakuraba
that's
stuff.
true.
It's a little
And
bit
again,
more subdued.
it's interesting because we have a guitar here. It's a little more relegated to the background. A very strong melody with like a guitar and I'm sorry, a keyboard and an organ playing off of each other like simultaneously, which is kind of interesting and a little bit of like a sense of menace to it, maybe a bit.
Almost like a playful menace.
Yeah, nothing too serious.
Puckish
The
menace.
yokai shoujo kind of gives you that feeling of like it's dangerous, but maybe not too dangerous. I don't know.
Might not lose a limb. Eh,
Yeah,
but
you might just get beat up a little bit. Who knows?
right. That's all right. We're saving the guitars for the last song.
Oh God, are we? They're all there.
It's all there. It's all there. But yeah, before that, we're going to go into a quote, and this quote is from. I had to look at looking up and just finding a quote, and we pinned on this one from a Catherine Fullerton Gerald, and that is, "Simplicity is an acquired taste. Mankind, left free, instinctively complicates life."
And like I feel like the obvious thing, given the subject of our talk here, is obviously you can apply that to possessions very easily. Like too many possessions like complicate your life in one way or another. But my brain goes in a completely different direction on that. Like it almost makes me think of for example, working at a project at my job or something, and I'm not particularly a project manager. I would rather die than be a project manager because my personality just does not really lend itself to being one. But there is a project manager saying that like every project is perfect until people get involved in it, and this really gives me vibes of that. Maybe that's not how it was meant to be interpreted necessarily, but that's definitely where my brain goes with it.
You mentioning that makes me think of that one with no no plan survives the first acts of battle or something like. I'm paraphrasing
I
it,
think
right?
yeah, I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing about that I actually really like on then reading this and hearing that is it only says simplicity. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't like. It's not a
That's true.
right. So you can, like you say, you have like keep things the orderly sense, or you've got things pared
Right.
down to this instead of this sort of discordant. Oh, here's the one thing, it's a shiny thing. Oh, here's another thing, it reminds me of this. Oh, here's this, and it's just like a
Right.
whole just hosh-posh
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah, simplicity does not have to be minimalism.
Exactly. Yeah, because we were combing through some minimalism ones that were a little
Yes.
haughty.
That were very much written by the board of minimalists under like another name to try to fool you into thinking otherwise.
Well, yeah, because it could get, and I hate using this word because I think it gets pinned to things unrightly so, but pretentious.
Sure.
But or like hot. I like to use haughty a bit more.
Haughty is maybe yeah.
Where it's like, oh well, yeah, obviously minimalism is the right way to go, and it's like,
Right, like
well,
you like possessions?
how materialistic of you.
Yeah, we can't be friends.
All right, that was, it's, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that like, I, and it's not like you don't have this yourself. Like you talked about going and to Japan to go in these trips. You just also like to purchase certain things that you're not able to in
Yeah.
other ways. So it's like you don't. It's not like you don't value experiences of things.
Oh, an experience is like an integral part of that,
Hmm.
especially when I'm going there. Like I relish going through book offs. Like that is some of the most fun that I can have on a trip there. Like just everything about it. Like
Hmm.
I absolutely love it. It's not just a transactional experience for me at all. Like digging through stuff is it's a great feeling.
I think I prefer going through the Geos. The what are yeah, the
They
the
have
Geos.
Do they have? Well, aren't those? Do those even exist anymore?
Well, yeah, well, they did. They're just more cluttered book offs and hard offs.
Okay, maybe either
maybe
they don't
maybe I'm
exist
misremembering.
anymore, or I just somehow haven't been into one.
They had them where I
Um,
was living.
I'll have to do some research on that later. I've definitely heard people talk about Geos before. You're certainly not the first
Okay,
person who I've ever heard say it.
the
I just
hypermedia electronics store.
I just had this moment where I was like, why haven't I been to one? Did they stop existing when I really started, taking trips to Japan? And the answer is to be determined.
Yeah, now they're pretty much like hard offs and stuff, but just
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
Maybe game
or
focused
book
more.
offs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because hard offs and book offs, of course, for those who don't know, are not explicitly game focused,
you're right.
even though they often are games at both of those places.
I this is not like this is anything really new to you, but there's somebody. Um, there's at least pictures of it.
Yeah, I'll have to see if maybe they just didn't ever have, because yeah, that was published in 2021, so that's a good bet that they probably still exist. Um, so either they're only in certain areas or I've made a horrible mistake and never been to one.
Well, to be fair, they're not like you're probably better off going to hard offs and
Oh, you
book offs.
think?
But sometimes games will have sneaky good stuff in them.
Right.
So I will throw that out there. More importantly, they'll never touch Mandarake there in Nagoya and
Well,
stuff. So
also Mandarake is generally a little bit more high priced because it knows what it is. Very much
it's.
so.
I mean, it is the keeper of time or
Yeah.
keepers of time. Or I mean, it's a pretty glorious kind of
Yeah,
subtitle.
a very grandiose claim that they make
Well,
there.
but like, because they have what, one in Nagoya and then one. Do they have one in Tokyo? Or
Yeah,
is
they
it
have one in Akihabara.
okay?
They have one in Nakano Broadway, which is also in like the general Tokyo area.
Hmm.
And those are the big Tokyo ones, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because the one in Nagoya is like 4 stories.
I've been to the one in Nagoya as well.
And that one,
Yeah.
like, and when you go into it, it has like those toys from like the 1930s and 40s and 50s and stuff like that.
Oh, they're very neat to go into, like even if you don't buy anything, because they're
Exactly.
like museums almost in a way. By the
Yeah.
way, before we leave Geo, I am looking now at pictures of one, and boy, isn't this wonderful how relevant this is to the quote? Boy, oh boy.
Right.
Uh, sorry. Anyway, they're a rental shop.
Yeah. You can rent
So,
as well.
okay, so they're rent and buy?
Yes.
Maybe I stayed away from them because they said rental. Because
Yeah.
looking at one, I've definitely seen them. I have distinct memories of seeing the sign.
Okay.
And I think I was like, rental. Okay, I don't care about this.
Yeah, no,
So maybe that's why I've never been in one.
that is where the one that was close to where I live is where I bought all three of the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games,
I see.
and
Okay.
it's also where I got um oh Xenoblade. I pre-ordered it from
Ah,
them because the
okay.
pre-order had a disc from that store as opposed to some of the other places. I was like, oh,
Ah, I see. Okay. I'll have to check one out next time just to see what I can find.
yeah. So it's a bit of a hosh posh, but like I said, sometimes there's just some sneaky good stuff in there. I'm giving
Yeah,
you some high quality secret information that everybody
I'll
probably knows,
take it.
but
Probably. And I should have known, but somehow just saw the rental part and dismissed it from there.
well, maybe most everybody else does too, because everybody else always thinks
I
of
can
book
only
offs and
hope,
hard
because
offs.
God, it is hard to find good stuff. I mean, it's not hard to find good stuff if you go far enough out, but if you're generally anywhere in the but the outskirts of the Tokyo area can be pretty hard to find good stuff.
But yeah, no, that and yeah, it's always nice to go to Mandarake just for the like you
It
said,
is.
it's almost like a
I
museum.
love it. I love it. It's so much fun.
So yeah, that's where I think I saw. Is that where I? That's not where I bought it, but I did see the um the like box release proper of Thrakia 776.
That would make sense because they always have that glass case of like either stuff that's too valuable for them to sell or stuff that might as well have a sign on this. It's like you can like this is for sale, but you'll never be able to afford
Well,
it.
no, see, it wasn't that pricey. It was only quote
Oh,
unquote. It was only like $100,
oh.
basically.
Well,
Yeah.
what the hell?
Well, why? Because I had the game already. I had the
Oh, okay, all right.
sure. It's the deluxe edition that doesn't have
All right, all right.
the proper label on it, so it looks like it's bootlegged. But you know what? It plays Thrakia 776.
Sure.
So whenever I want my teeth kicked in, I can just plug that
Right.
bad boy in.
Hurt me.
Right, right. So, um, yeah. Anything else that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think I'm good. It was a good discussion and it was good to be back on the show again.
Yeah, thank you for coming back on. And I know there's a few other topics there. There's
Yeah.
another one in particular that I'm going to have to pick everybody's brain on, um, just because I'm curious. I don't want to, like, but I'll talk about that afterwards.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, so that leaves us to the last song, the outro, or we'll save that.
Oh,
We'll save that for a moment. Before that, I want to wish everybody enjoy your weekend, weekday, everything in between, and all that sort of fun stuff. But we have an outro to talk about because by golly gee, and I've probably used this song before, but I love this outro.
doesn't
I
matter.
love this tune. And it's Hadokugan no Jealousy or Green Eyed Jealousy, and it is sublime.
I love it. I love everything about it.
It's just even just like the start of it. Like there's another song, and I don't think I have it ripped to my computer yet. From like my CDs, I only have two like sleeve cases full of CDs, which people nowadays is like, man, that's a lot of CDs. It's like, no, it's not. But
Right.
thank you.
No.
um, but there's another song that I gotta find that's similar in vibe, where this one has this guitar, that just
Yeah.
opening guitar that's just like a really,
Yeah.
you're like,
Oh,
okay, all right, and then it just kind of goes, and you're like, oh, okay,
so hard. The drums too. Oh my God. The drums in this song are amazing.
yeah, it is. It's just a great piece. And
It's like you could almost be listening to like Anthem or something at this point. Like I almost expect like Eizo Sakamoto vocals to like come in at some point,
that would be pretty sweet.
wouldn't it?
That would be pretty. Yeah, it would. um, Yeah, it's just I don't. There's something about it. Like I would love to make little music videos to some of these songs, even though I know I
That'd be
don't.
fun.
It'd be fun. I don't know if I'd ever have the talent to do it, but like this would be one of them in particular because where you could go a lot of different directions with this.
Oh
All
yeah.
right.
And like these are all rearrangements of Toho songs from what I understand. And like I would be very interested to hear like what the I probably should seek out like what the original actually sounded like in whatever game it was in.
But these are all
Just
from
to
the
see
same
like
game, I think.
oh, they're all from the same game.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
subterranean animism.
Okay. Well, I should probably seek out the original because I mean, my God, I'm sure I wouldn't like it as much as this rearrangement, but I would love to just see like how far from, how much liberty did they take to just turn it into like this like an absolute shred fest that it ends
Well,
up like turning into
right.
like
When that's
by the guitar
the
solo.
wild thing about it is, I think for the most part, they're pretty like in a melodic sense, they're pretty in
Well,
key,
sure.
right?
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Just because of how much of a genius Zune is. Just the fact that
Right.
he made these games strictly because he wanted to get his music out there
Right.
is just like person after my own heart. Like holy crap!
Right.
It's just so. But it just turns into bleeps and bloops.
Yeah. And I mean he's an amazing composer, like no doubt. It would just be interesting to see, okay, like I'm sure they based the melody structure off of it, but just how much like rocking up did they do on this, you
Oh,
know?
right, right. No, I get you. Well, because I think of some other arrangements that are more Joe TV is one of the doujinshi that I think of. Not that they do bad work. It's just that it's a lot
Mm.
of layering. So
Right,
it'll
right,
be like,
right.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, we'll have a few measures of one instrument, and then we'll add in another one, and then so it just makes for a very different vibe. But it's,
Right.
yeah. So, but yeah, everybody enjoy this tune. I might actually just leave the
Yes.
whole tune because it's just so darn good,
It's worth it.
right? So, all right, but yeah, that's it. Thank you once again, B. Clark. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and everybody else, I guess thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. I mean it.
Bye
All
bye.
right, take it easy. Bye.